get like an 8-kill streak. Get an Apache. Call him in. Let's go.
At your studio, you're starting to shape up. What else are you doing?
Yeah, so I had a friend that came over yesterday. I have a big curtain that's going to come in, so it'll cut off that side of the wall. I'll have complete blackout. And then we've got some bookshelves that are going to come in here. The putters are going to move back. And then we'll take the trophies down. I'm going to replace it with all of like helmets. I've got a Duke basketball signed by the entire 2001 national championship team. I got some things showing up. It'll be fun.
Good stuff.
Yeah. Probably my signed Adam Thielen jersey can't. It's rip.
You have that signed ball that you owe me in back there anywhere?
Son of a bitch. Oh, God. Thanks for reminding me again 3 months later.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Stochastic.com MLB Deeper Dive. I'm Dave Loughran and _D, joined by Eric Lindquist at Eric Lindquist. Yeah, studio's starting to shape up. Now all you got to do is eventually like once the lighting is the way you want it, like you said, black that out, maybe do something in the background a little bit. It's gonna pop. It's gonna look real good. How you feeling, man?
Be fun. Doing all right. Yeah, 12 gamer. Well, you were the one on vacation. I want to hear about your trip. I think everybody else probably does too. I'm sure you talked about it this morning on the strategy show a little bit, but you had an okay time. Sounds like you might have partaken some fun activities with the fam.
Yeah, man. I told Josh I was out on the beach at 10:30 at night metal detecting with my brother-in-laws.
That is not the first thing I was expecting to hear you say.
Well, I mean, we were drunk, but like, how wild of a life has it become for me that, like, my brother-in-law's in the.
Did you have the headphones on? Did you do?
No, I didn't go headphones.
Okay,
although it did come with them. I found one a pretty decent. My brother-in-law's into all that stuff, and
wow.
I was like that might be fun. I'm gonna get one. I'll go down there with you. I'll bring it to the beach. I said, because you think of it this way, when someone's doing that, and like you're down there with them, you don't want to not be doing it. Like, even if you don't like it, if you're down there and everyone's having some beers, you want to get in on the action too, especially if he's sweeping and he hits something. You're like, shit, dude, because it's not about money. You know what I mean? It's never about money. Right. It's about the hunt. And you know what?
You're full-blown treasure hunter now. You're dude, Nicolas Cage.
I'm straight Curse of Oak Island shit now. But it's funny in a sense because just like the lifestyle that you and I live and what we do for work, it is essentially a gamble. That's all it is. It's a gamble. You're just going down there and you're rolling the dice, but it's just super low stakes, and you can drink while you're doing it without it impacting your ROI.
What's your ROI? 3 cents an hour? Did you find anything?
Dude, my ROI is like, I paid off probably 0.5% of the metal detector. But it's not about that.
Painful.
People go forever without finding something, and then you find something. Yeah. Like,
it's like fishing. Yeah, fishing action. People go and fish all the time. They don't catch anything, and then the one day you catch a 15-pound walleye out of the middle of Lake Minnetonka. It's beautiful. Because
as great as it feels to, because I haven't fished in a while, but I used to fish a lot. As great as it feels to catch a fish, like a big fish, the experience of being out there with the boys and knocking a few back is, you're making memories, man. That's all it is. It's no different than any of that, except I need to gain like 300 pounds, get 40 years older to really fit the mold. Like, I'm out there and I looked at him and I was like, man, what the fuck are we doing? But we've made some
interesting choices to arrive here.
Yeah, but
to this place. But it was fantastic. I'm sure that's a blast. I ended up drunkenly playing pickleball on Friday barefoot after a wedding rehearsal dinner. And then, it's just like, you don't want to be the one person who didn't have shoes at the house or wherever they were all staying, and everybody else had them. I'm like, fuck it, we'll just play barefoot. We'll run around a little bit. Ended up being a blast. You don't have to go full blast and break your foot or anything, although one of my buddies basically did. But it was just like, yeah, you just want to partake, and you don't have to be slush.
It's the camaraderie, you know what I mean?
Yeah. You got to build that rapport, baby.
I promise you, if you were there with me, and we were out there on the beach and we just brought a bunch of beers with us, you'd be having fun. I guarantee it. Like
Oh, I hated partaking in anything in Chicago with you. I
Yeah,
didn't.
yeah, we didn't have fun at all.
Hey, we got to go. Okay, sounds good. Yeah. 20 minutes later, hey, you ready, Lofty? Let's go.
Oh, all right. Happy to have you guys with us. Hit that thumbs up, subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so yet. All that stuff goes a long way for us. We're heading into football season, but we still got baseball left. We got over a month of baseball left for sure. So October 1st is the final slate, like real slate, 15 games of the regular season. So still a month left. We got 12 games today. And Eric, let's not bury the lead.
Braves. Oh, I see what you did. That's fun.
Atlanta, monster implied total, minus 245 on the money line. We're not going to start with this game, but just how does this influence, like, affect the landscape of the slate, knowing that in the top stack tool, they have over a 25% top stack probability with 23 other teams on the slate?
I think it has me playing some pitchers that I don't even want to say the names of yet, because
Josh said the same thing this morning.
I mean, you're just running the numbers and there's no way around it. You want to have Braves exposure. And if you want to have Braves exposure, you're basically saying, I don't care who shows up in those pitcher spots, because the upside of what the Braves can do in a spot like this, they're leading the league in home runs by a mile. They have power, they have speed, they have everything you could ask for, and they have the best ballpark in baseball for offense against an absolute dog doo-doo pitcher. So, like,
lefty, no less.
The lefty, no less. It's just, it is next level, the number of things that I am doing in order to play as many Braves as I humanly possibly can.
All right, so let's actually start it off with a game where I personally love the offense on one side of this White Sox and Orioles game. I really do. I mean, obviously the Braves. That's why, I kind of started it off with them. We don't need to spend much time on the Braves talking about them as much as we're going to talk about how do we, get Braves into lineups and what are we doing with pitching and all of that stuff. But Baltimore is an interesting one to me against Kopech. I mean, he's allowed 28 home runs on the season, north of 2 home runs per 9, and the season's almost over. Gives up an insane amount of power, particularly to righties at Camden Yards. Baltimore has a 5.5% top stack probability, getting around 6.5% aggregate ownership. But this does feel like a spot where if you're not going the Braves, Baltimore could blow Kopech up. This guy's had games where he's allowed 5 and 4 home runs in one single starts.
Yeah, we don't have many slates that we're ever going to run into like this that are 12 gamers where it's just one obvious team in MLB DFS that it's just like, I can't live without them. But if you're building out a single entry team, you got to think that you're looking at some of these higher implied totals. You got San Diego against Wainwright, 5.7, Boston, 5.6, and that's, dead even there in our tools here with this spot for Baltimore. A little bit of negative leverage, but I think one of the things you can do with this team especially is you can just isolate power from any direction. Like, a lot of times when you stack up Baltimore, it's just, hey, how do I play Rushman, Henderson, and surround 3 guys that hopefully go off with them, the Santanders and such? You can play power from every standpoint here, even in a ballpark that's tough for righty power, because he's got a 196 expected ISO, Michael Kopech does, against righties, a 247 actual ISO. That's actually higher than his actual ISO against lefties, even though that expected ISO is 255, which is just insane to be looking at from lefties. So it's like, there are ways to pluck 2 or 3 of these guys that aren't necessarily just Henderson or, positionality, especially with Rutschman. He's just somebody that I feel like I'm overweight to every slate. I'm going to try to do some unique things in like 3 max. I'm going to be building out 150 as well. And I can't imagine that I'm going to be getting to tons of 5-mans because of what's showing up with me with Atlanta. But I love getting to pieces of this team that aren't even just necessarily the obvious guys.
And then how about Grayson Rodriguez on the other side? A lot of ownership, obviously. I had mentioned this. It might have been to you. I know we both talked about it before he went out there and mowed down the Padres. You remember that a couple starts ago. You looked at the starts that he had when he came back up, and it was Dodgers, Rays, Yankees, Blue Jays, Astros, and he had held his own. And then Padres goes out there and lights him up. Then he had Toronto again, and he was, fine given the difficult matchup, like 6 innings, 3 earned, fine. He's fine. He's kind of what you would expect. But now you've got him against the White Sox. At this price point, it's really no surprise that he's getting this much ownership.
No, it's not. You look at the K rate, especially 24.3% against all circumstances here. You look at his lefty righty splits, about identical, 24.1% K rate to lefties, 24.5% to righties. There aren't really any imposing lefties that I'm worried about in this White Sox lineup where that 246X ISO could really come into play for him. That's definitely been his bugaboo on the season. He has a 118 expected ISO against righties. So I think the matchup's as good as you could possibly ask for, just given that Gavin Sheets is one of your lefties. Yohan Moncada is one of your lefties. There's just not a lot of intimidation, if you will, from that side of the plate. So I understand why the ownership is where it is. I'm actually coming in a little bit underneath it right now, although I do expect as I rerun stuff that 7,500, because of what he gets me and because of what's happened to Brian Wu throughout the day, I'm probably going to be over the field. That's my guess here. I haven't reran it though.
Do you have any interest in Kopech or White Sox bats today?
If he falls into a couple lineups, cool. He's 6,300, but you just kind of laid out the case. He gives up power to both sides of the plate. Baltimore, this is still going to be a ballpark that plays up for lefty power, plays down for righty power, but I can't really fire it up here on this specific slate. I thought that I would, but again, it's just one of those things where it seems like a veto is showing up for me. I'm taking some really gross stances with guys like Kyle Harrison, who's now been steamed up throughout the day, getting to a lot of these sub 7K guys. But Kopech, because of what that downside can really look like, finding myself onto some quote unquote, it's not safe. Nothing's safe here on this slate with some of the pitchers I'm rostering, but I kind of need even guys that are cheaper than that 6,300 number. We'll get to them in a little bit.
How about Washington and Toronto as well? Clayton, what's up, Clayton? He said value bats hitting is going to be the ticket on this slate. Lineup generator night. He said, yeah, always a good night for the lineup generator, but these big slates, no doubt. I actually just pulled it up, and you can see the optimal projection and the ownership, how chalky and contrarian all these lineups are, and discard the ones you don't like, save the ones you do like. You can set your stack types, lock players and swap players for $4.48 for the first week. Link in the description and in chat, by the way. You will not, I can say this with certainty, you won't find a better tool in the industry. Whether you're playing 3, 5, 20 max entries, quarter arcade, or even the bigger contest, specifically in these cheaper contests, lower stakes contests, our guys with the stochastic avatars using the lineup generator have just absolutely murdered it this season. But I just saved the first 20 lineups that came up naturally, or normally if you wanted to, you could discard them and whatever, but I wanted to see what my exposures were and stack exposures and see the lineups. You can also export these straight to CSV. Stack exposures, this will surprise nobody, Eric, but Atlanta, 47% stack exposure of 20 lineups, right? So that's what, yeah. 9 out of 20 lineups have Atlanta stacked. Mm-hmm. Also a lot of Pittsburgh, because they rank number one in value percentage in the top stacks tool. They're discounted in a pretty decent matchup. So that's going to happen. And then there's San Diego, Colorado, San Francisco, Minnesota, Boston, a little bit of Baltimore as well. Not really surprised to see that. Highest owned players right now, Ronald Acuna Jr. How about this? Ronald Acuna, 7K, still 58%. Grayson Rodriguez, a lot of him. Austin Riley, Kevin Pillar, and then a lot of Brian Wu as well, and Pittsburgh.
It's so hard to get away from that combination today. Our data is really showing it. I think the Pittsburgh side is one that I am trying to mitigate a little bit, but you laid it out, 10.2% top value percentage. There's a reason that data is better than what we're going to be able to build by hand, and that's what the lineup generator is doing. It is sorting all of the lineups for you. It is basically going into Cruncher and just saying, hey, spit out these lineups, let's do the sims with them, and then we crop out the top ones for you and fire them up into the lineup generator. So it's a super easy way to know that you're making positive EV lineups from the get-go. And yeah, Pittsburgh, 5 implied team total. Not really surprised. They have some power that I'm a little bit surprised to see some of these AAA guys get called up, but you need some cheapies. You need to surround these Atlanta bats with something. And it seems like Pittsburgh's super easy path to do it.
Yeah, man. Vic David Figueroa, 200 IQ move with the lineup generator. Yeah, man. Brian Durkee, lineup generator. Let's get this money. 13 to 20 nights. Beautiful. Beautiful. Yeah, man. People know. People are bought in at this point. People are bought in. $4.48 for the first week. Why not? Links down there. Links in the chat if you want to check it out. Perfect night to do so, like our boy Clayton mentioned. Next game up, we've got Washington and Toronto. So a couple of things to consider here. One, Washington, just a huge dog on the road. Hardly any surprise there. They have a 3.5 run implied total. Kevin Gausman has a top 2 pitcher probability of 24% on DraftKings, 31.5% ownership. As far as pitching goes, it's pretty much just Gausman, and then we can talk about some bats here.
Yeah, it's Gausman, but this is like the I'm not playing Atlanta play, is getting to Kevin Gausman on this slate.
Yeah.
And he's got the highest top 2 percentage, 24.2%. Again, there's a reason that he's pretty darn popular, but there's no way I can get close to this. I will need every dollar that I can. Blake Snell works a little bit easier for me. He's lower owned as well. So my lineups where I am spending up for a pitcher, it seems as though I'm just going to land on Blake Snell repeatedly, take my shots there because he's another guy who's just matchup immune. But there's no doubt Kevin Gausman with his splitter here going up against a Washington team that doesn't strike out a ton by any means, 19.2% K rate to righties, but that splitter kind of does a lot of the dirty work for him here. There's enough lefties that we should have the opportunity to still utilize that pitch and be able to get some easy Ks. So he's got the talent. He's the best pitcher on this slate, I believe, but Blake Snell just who's showing up more.
Are you interested at all in either side of these hitters? Just looking at Toronto against Gray, who's not anything special, but he's also not a gas can like some of the pitchers on this slate. And then against Gausman, I'm really no need to talk about the Nats bats in this game. There's plenty of teams to get weird with.
Yeah, I mean, you've got a 181 expected ISO for Josiah Gray against lefties here, but I say this a lot, but Toronto, I don't really love the lefties. You have Brandon Belt, you have Dalton Varsho, Kevin Kiermaier today as well. Brandon Belt, 206 expected batting average. He's been better of late for whatever you want to call that, but 34.7% K rate. You do get another K up there up top. I have no Josiah Gray interest at what was the number at that I had before. Yeah, I have 0% of him going up against Toronto here at 7,700, but there's at least a chance that I land on a little bit of Brandon Belt just because it is a lefty going up against a pitcher with a 181 expected ISO against that handedness. But generally, you're looking at righties here. He has a lower K rate against them. The ball's getting put in play, but it's about average 290 BABIP and then a 165 expected ISO. There's just a lot better spots on this specific slate. And it's not like you're getting a discount roster in Toronto by any means. You're getting a discount compared to Atlanta, but again, everything's relative to their run total, and Toronto just doesn't quite have it for me today.
What about this next game with Houston and Boston? Christian Javier, Chris Sale, 10 run implied total. So runs expected to be scored here. Both teams have implied totals north of 5 right now. But it's funny, you look at Boston, a lot of their best hitters are batting from the left side of the plate. But Javier, 194 X ISO against lefties, 204 actual ISO. So not good, but against righties, he's been blown up with a 266 X ISO against right-handed bats. A lot of power because it's funny, 338 X WOBA, 278 actual WOBA there. So he's been lucky in that respect. But there is certainly he's been lucky from a power perspective against righties this year. What do you do with the bats in this game? And if you want to start with pitching, fine, but paying 8,500 for Javier in this matchup with a pretty underwhelming season seems ill-advised.
Yeah, I think one of my favorite contrarian pieces of this slate is getting to a 7-hole Trevor Story, just getting contrarian there. And then specifically, Justin Turner 4,900 is just jumping off the page for me. You have a 420 expected ISO for him his last 3 starts, Christian Javier. You're looking at a guy who his velocity sitting around 93.5 miles per hour now over the course of his last 3 starts there. It's up a tick, but for some reason, the guy has just lost the ability to miss bats, and there is not a lot of reprieve here. You have lefties who obviously hit righties better. You then get these righties that are in just a much better spot than normal. Justin Turner, Adam Duvall, Trevor Story. Maybe even Connor Wong a little bit as a catcher, 39.1% hard hit percentage, but an 89.6 average mile per hour velocity off the bat this season. That's decent enough where he's somebody that's even showing up. So 1-8, I do like this Boston team. This is one where you compare them to the matchup in the spot for like a Toronto, and you're trying to like not be playing everybody on a slate like this. I definitely prefer Boston. They sit in that kind of caliber. I prefer them actually over Baltimore in terms of five mans compared to what they have for Kopech, because I do expect them to be negatively leveraged. And I expect Boston to come in a little bit positively leveraged. And that's what the top stacks tool is showing. That's what I think I'm going to be riding with.
So then if we were to just kind of put a bow on this game, look at it from all angles, pitching, hitting, what are you playing and what are you fading across all pitching and hitting?
Yeah, I can't really land on Houston today all that much. I do have a little bit of Yordan Alvarez and Kyle Tucker because I do every single slate. I'm pretty much just always going to have them because left on left, they're still going to be extremely effective. Kyle Tucker, a 222 expected ISO against lefties on the season. Yordan Alvarez, 221. So they're pieces that I think from a super contrarian standpoint, awesome. But again, the opportunity cost of using outfield spots on guys that aren't Ronald Acuna, that aren't Kevin Pillar, that aren't some of these other Atlanta pieces up and down that lineup, it's high. It's high on today's slate. I will also say Yanner Diaz been way, way better against righties. It showed up in his AAA data. It's now showed up here in the majors. So he's somebody that I will skip and not necessarily have in some of these stacks. Of course, you get bullpen opportunity, and Boston's definitely going to bring in a righty at some point, you would think. They don't really have a whole lot of options there, but definitely not going to be a team that I'm going to be getting to in any prominent manner. Just a little bit of those two one-offs.
All right. Hey, hit that thumbs up too. We're at 28 from 100 with a long ways to go. Not bad. Not bad. I think that's doable, right?
We can do better. It's just like we can do better.
It's passable. Yeah. I mean, I think we reach 100 rather quickly here. We got a bunch of good people. I know it's Monday. I get it. Like, I don't hold it against you guys, but just a subtle reminder. You forget. I remind. So we do. Appreciate you in advance. We'll get there. Texas, New York Mets, John Gray, Tyler McGill. All right, so 9-run total. Texas favored on the road, -135. See, right now you've got John Gray actually pulling some ownership, not a lot, around 5.7%. Then you have McGill around 8.7. It's really one of these spots where, looking at both sides of this game, that it's not like there's certain games here where it's just full out fade. And I think you could potentially make that argument for maybe New York Mets bats today. But Texas stack aggregate ownership around 3-4%, 4% top stack probability. And then McGill and Gray both getting between 5 and 8% ownership today. McGill 5,800. It's strictly a price play. The only reason he's not 0% owned.
Yep, I hate it, but I'm almost double digits on him. He's terrible. I have no justification whatsoever. He's got a 10.4% barrel percentage, a sub 18% K rate, a 500 expected slugging. And as if that isn't bad, he's facing a Texas Rangers team that is a 114 WRC plus against righties. What am I doing? I am literally just playing him for price. He falls in that bucket of guys sub 6K that I'm just mixing and matching on this slate. It's for large field tournaments. I think also, if you can hit on the right combination, I'm not saying Zach Greinke's good. I'm not saying Xavier Curry is good. I'm not saying Kyle, am I going to really click on Muller? I might is really what it comes down to. All of these guys are in play because of what they get you, and what they get you are the expensive bats you want on this slate. And yeah, it's disturbing. I have no justification other than price.
Yeah, Josh today was saying Kyle Muller and Adam Wainwright.
I have like 4% Adam Wainwright.
Yeah, it feels good, huh?
No, it does not. Yeah. Very excited to have San Diego put up runs for the first time all flipping year against I literally was considering playing Adam Wainwright for single entry today. Flat 5K. That's how disgusting today is.
I get it. Yeah. Look, if you get 3 fantasy points from him, you're feeling great about life. Kyle Harrison's an interesting one, though. We'll talk about him.
Love him. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the strikeout stuff there is legitimate. And you know that it's going to translate. He struck out 31.5% of Phillies. They just, he ran into a buzzsaw.
Yep.
Better matchup, better park.
He's my highest owned pitcher for what it's worth.
I get it. Better pitcher, better matchup, better park today in San Francisco. That could be one spot to get to for sure. Do you look to get towards bats in this game for the Mets or Texas? Mets don't look very appealing, particularly according to our data today.
I like the Texans. This is one of those other teams that if I'm not going to play Baltimore 5-mans, I am playing Boston 5-mans. This is a team that I do not expect to carry any kind of ownership. There's going to be a lot of positively leveraged stacks to get to a certain extent because it's all relative to Atlanta. But if I'm looking for a team to put up 10 or 12, why not them against Tyler McGill? So this is a both sides of it side for me. As for the Mets side, no thank you against John Gray. 38% hard hit percentage. The Ks are not nearly what they once were, 20.6% K rate, but a 5.3% barrel percentage. I just don't see the upside. Yes, DJ Stewart has been kind of defying logic, 49.1% hard hit percentage. Nimmo, Lindor, Alonso, there's always a reason you can get to them. They're going to be underowned relative to their chances of succeeding, but not worth it for me on this slate.
Barnaby, did I say Texans? Probably. Dude, well, I told you, once football season rolls around, I'm going to be
Nico Collins batting third.
Yeah, you're going to hear a lot of confusion for sure. Happens. Josh and I were talking about it the other day, how he always like catcher and center. That is just, it's going to happen once those seasons begin to overlap.
Yeah.
It just does. Just does. Man,
no
I was looking in the owner's box today. Right, I did a review video on that. They have the Superflex DFS contest, the 200K one, and it's wide receiver or quarterback, running back, wide receiver, flex, superflex. Do you know how insane game stacks are going to look?
That's
you know how crazy these game stacks are going to.
That's really, really fun. I mean, I feel like week 17 is just like I could do it verbatim at this point in time, but like also I feel like that's something everybody will do, right?
No, this is DFS.
Wait, what?
Yeah.
I thought you were saying, oh, okay. Let's go. That'll be a lot of fun.
Yeah. It's going to be sick, dude.
Oh my God. All right. Yeah. Well, week 1.
Yeah, it's going to be sweet.
All right.
Cleveland and Minnesota. Xavier and Curry, Kenta Maeda, 8.5 run total here. Minnesota Twins, not the Vikings. Big favorites at home. So I guess the place to start would be with Kenta Maeda. Here's my question for you, right? 9,200. I think the price point's reasonable. That pitch count isn't as limited. Certainly isn't as limited as it was earlier in the year when we worried about that. I mean, I don't think you're going to see this guy throw 105 pitches anytime soon. But can he get north of 90? Yes. He's expensive. He's a good pitcher. But Cleveland just has a extraordinarily low strikeout rate versus lefties and righties alike. How much of him are you getting to today?
Not any. The lowest strikeout rate on the entire slate, 18.9% K rate against righties, the Cleveland Guardians. I can't really do it. 9,200 price point's kind of in a dead zone. I don't know if he has that 105 pitch upside. So you kind of are limited in that regard. You're kind of looking for an outlier performance for him, considering the price point. And I would much rather just turn that ownership into guys more expensive or completely bypass it altogether. There's really only one guy in the 8K range that I'm getting to any of, and it's Bobby Miller. So I don't really have any desire to try to make anything work in that range outside of him because I'm just shocked every time I look at his stuff. The fact that he's not getting swing and miss, it has to happen eventually. You can't throw it 99 with a splitter falling. It's just ridiculous that he's not getting the swing and miss. Arizona, not the best spot, but outside of Bobby Miller, I am not remotely close to the field on any one of these pitchers in this range.
Yeah, we both said Texans. That's awesome.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Sorry. Yeah, Maeda, like he certainly could go out there and just rack up a bunch of strikeouts. It can have any matchup, but what's his K prop today? 5.5?
Yeah, it's 5.5 pretty much.
Is it 5.5? Okay. I was just because you can't put it at 6.5 in this spot.
Yeah, he is at 5.5.
4.5. on DK. Under is over is juiced heavy, but 4.5 on DK at minus 165.
4.5. Yep. What in
Damn.
the world? I see the 5.5 here is the prevailing number. Bet River Superbook, a couple of other spots here. The 5.5 is, but yeah, 5.5 juiced big time over. And then, yeah, the under juiced plus 128 at FanDuel.
Wait, what's the under on 5.5?
Under at 5.5 minus 145.
Okay. So yeah.
Best available.
I don't love that at 9,200.
No, I don't. And here's the thing. I'm wearing the Twins shirt. Lindy's Lean Sykes Locks, Minnesota. I am absolutely for this team today, but it's all going to be by way of bats. This is going to be my secondary team that I get to a ton to complement what I'm planning on doing with the Braves.
Strong segue, man. So you like these Minnesota bats a lot against Curry then?
Absolutely love them. Like to a ridiculous extent. Like this is one of those where the data doesn't necessarily match up based on what I'm seeing, just going through some of his pitch mix stuff. Xavier Curry is living on a prayer, Bon Jovi style. It is unbelievable that he has a 128 expected ISO against lefties. That's Kenta Maeda. I was going to say there's no way that is correct. Xavier Curry, 141 expected ISO. Again, I knew that it was low, 20.4% K rate, but against righties even. A 13.1% K rate with a 250 expected ISO. I mean, we're talking about a guy who's going to get the platoon going against him. It's 86 degrees and humid in Minneapolis today. The ball should be flying, and he has over a 20-degree average launch angle on batted balls in play with a 16.6% K rate. If you're not going to miss bats for Royce Lewis, for Edward Julian, for Jorge Polanco, and obviously it's weird to not see Joey Gallo. I think he put himself in the doghouse with the stupid leaning off of second base thing with the foul ball. I don't even know what he was doing, but he's not in the lineup today. Matt Wallner, Solano, and then Taylor there. But part of that could also just be the fact that they're looking at the same things we are, where a 250 expected ISO against righties, that's not something that you just say, hey, we got to roll out all these lefties against him. You've got Solano batting 8th, Taylor in the 9 hole. 1 through 9, I am getting to so much of the Twins because I think the opportunities of getting, 2 in 5.2s and 5.3s, running into a couple of solo shots here against Xavier Curry is very, very likely.
Let's talk about the Padres in St. Louis. Blake Snell, Adam Wainwright. This is a really interesting spot to me because Blake Snell's at 13% ownership right now in our top pitchers tool. 19% top 2 probability. With expensive pitchers, sometimes you'll see like positive leverage, but as Josh and I talked about, oftentimes it's just not actionable. Zach Gallen, a pretty decent example of that today. But Blake Snell's not in a bad spot. You just saw this is a St. Louis team that is, I mean, it's over for them, on the season. It's over for them. They were sniffing earlier in the season. Maybe there was a shot that they could get competitive, but it's not the case, right? Like it's over. But you saw Wheeler go out there, mow him down. You saw Nola go out there, mow him down. Both at pitch or very hitter-friendly ballparks in warm weather. And now Blake Snell's going out 13%. I know he's expensive. Also, I know Kevin Gossman's got Washington, so that's going to depress ownership considerably. But 10-8 against St. Louis. Strikes out at the 7th highest clip versus lefties on the season. What are your thoughts on Blake Snell today?
Yeah, this is my second favorite pitcher, 9K and above. He's $400 cheaper than Kevin Gausman. You're getting the positive leverage, top 2 percentage of 19%. Again, the opportunity cost is not being able to stack up Atlanta the way you might want to be able to play him, but I'm getting a huge ownership discount. You can still make him work with like 3 pieces of Atlanta. It's not extremely difficult to make that work, but I do find, as everything you said, where this is a St. Louis team that's really going nowhere at this point in time. You'd normally be terrified in St. Louis to stack them up against the likes of Paul Goldschmidt, Nolan Arenado, Wilson Contreras right down the middle of that lineup. But then you get Tyler O'Neill up there, 27% K rate on the season, batting 2nd today. You get Kaiser Soze in the 7 hole there playing catcher, 23.8% K rate. Jordan Walker, 23.5%. And Blake Snell has the kind of talent where if I'm going to get a third of the ownership or close to a third of the ownership off of Kevin Gausman to make this work, I'm avoiding a lot of overlap with anything that I try to do with those lineups in Atlanta. So it is all relative to what you're doing with Atlanta, how much you're going to get to those guys at the top. But if you made me pick one for single entry, if you made me pick one to be overweight to, I'm going to be going the Blake Snell side just about every single time.
It's a good spot. Yeah. What about Wainwright? I know. I hate it. Dude he's bad. I mean, if you want an idea of how bad he is, I mentioned it this morning. Zach Greinke has a swinging strike rate around like 7.5%, which is well below average. Wainwright's at 4.8.
Yeah, I see that.
He doesn't miss bats. The only strikeouts he gets are going to be called looking strikeouts. It's shocking. Josh and I spent some time on this. We were looking up who have been the worst pitchers in the league. By all metrics, he's been bottom 5. And he's only thrown 77 innings or something like that. But
it's like him and Alek Manoah.
Manoah's been horrible. Who are the other ones? Noah Syndergaard
DFA'd yesterday.
Yeah, Noah Syndergaard.
Ken Waldichuk. That would make sense. How much wood could a Waldichuk chuck if a Waldichuk could chuck wood? A lot, because he'd only run into it.
I don't even get it. But that doesn't even make sense. I
but it's provocative.
Running into the bat, but yeah.
That's what I was getting at.
But would the wood chuck?
The wood would fly because there would be splinters flying off of it from the hard contact. That was a Bikram yoga stretch.
I'll accept it.
Thank you.
What are you doing with, I know you said you have 4%. I mean, that is not because you like him, because you think he's good. He's not. He's dirt cheap, and the Atlanta bats, some of them are $7,000. Like, there's no other explanation for it. But man, that is the worst feeling in the world.
He has a 0% top 2 percentage. 0. 0 is the number. He's tied with Austin Gomber with a 0% top 2 percentage. Now, let me just say, Adam Wainwright is a top 3 worst pitcher in baseball. But just like I talked about in a spot there with Tyler McGill, it's not about talent. It's not about anything else. If I got 8 or 10 or 12, again, this is Atlanta. If they do relatively normal things today, like relatively normal things, this is a team being overweight to an Adam Wainwright, 8x on 0.5%. That can work out for you. There's a lot of situations where it does. Otherwise, the Sims tool wouldn't spit out any Adam Wainwright for me. They wouldn't do me like that. But it's just, I kind of need somebody down here that he's the cheapest pitcher on the entire slate. He's probably going to die, and it's going to be a very stupid thing for 4% of lineups to have. He's got a 262 expected ISO against lefties, a 226 expected ISO against righties. Those are as bad as it gets kind of numbers, but he's 5K. So there you go.
They're pretty much as bad as it gets.
As bad as it gets.
Yeah, they're pretty rough. Yeah, that's okay. We'll figure it out. It's just strictly, like, what would you be happy with out of Wainwright tonight? Seriously, what would you be satisfied with?
I'd be satisfied with 10.
Yeah,
10 would be. I think 10 is like what you're looking for.
It's arbitrary, but 10 is the number where it's like maybe he goes 6 innings, gives up 2, strikes out 3, and gets the win or something.
Yeah, 15 would be like take your pants off and take off your pants and jacket, Blink-182 style.
You didn't need to say that. We knew what that was. Most people know what that is. That was a great album.
Yep. It's just, truly the best, but it always makes me think of American Pie 2 now, that entire album. Because I think every single song on that album plays throughout that movie.
Really?
Does.
That's cool. That's a sweet soundtrack then.
It's pretty fire.
Milwaukee and... Oh, wait, do we want to talk bats from this? I mean, San Diego bats against St. Louis, we should probably talk, or against Wainwright, we should probably touch on.
Yeah, it's a spot where if you're not going to play Atlanta in single entry, you're running into the second most popular team in San Diego. I strongly prefer Atlanta if you're going to put the two of them next to each other. It's been so brutal to try to do anything with Xander Bogaerts, Garrett Cooper, who actually is showing up for me a little bit, so I take that back. Matt Carpenter, Gary Sanchez, Trent Grisham. I mean, it's been brutal. Soto, Machado, Tatis, those are the guys you want to be getting to, but everybody else is clicking on them against Wainwright too. So I'm just inclined to be fading the Padres, and I hate saying that because, again, they're the second most likely team, I think, to be putting up the most runs on this slate. That's what our data is showing, and it's, by a pretty considerable margin over third. You got, nearly 3% difference between Baltimore, Boston, Seattle's down there pretty close as well. I'm just not going to get to them, and it's going to be a tough pill to swallow if they go nuts, because would it surprise me if they completely nuked Adam Wainwright? No. But all of that ownership for me is going towards Atlanta.
Hey, if you guys are interested in free money and you like sports and football's coming up, Caesar Sportsbook, Eric's got it right behind them. I was actually surprised they did this because I've been around the wood. I've been around the block a few times here. They never do these type of promos. It's always the first match or the first bet insurance.
Yeah.
Caesars right now has bet 50 and get $250. That is good. Okay.
Great. We
were saying on the morning strategy show that some of these sports books, like the $1,250 first bet insurance that they usually do, that's what I did when I first signed up at Caesars, is awesome. And actually better than this if you can max it. But if you're someone that's like, hey, I'd like to throw $50 down or $100 down, this is exponentially better than any of those first bet insurance opportunities you're going to get. Because
not only that though, and this is something I haven't even brought up because I hadn't even thought about it, but I just pulled up my Caesars rewards because, going to Vegas, other things like that, seeing what you can redeem and what you can do. If you're going to build up rewards at a sports book, Caesars has got to be the number one place to do that. No?
Yeah. Yeah. Like Caesars probably BetMGM too, just because they both have those like casino rewards and stuff and the stays and everything. Yeah. There's a lot of great stuff for sure. But $50, you're getting $250. You bet 50, use the link in the description or chat if you want to get this. Bet 50, get 250. It's awesome. 250 in bonus bets. Most people like these promos a lot more than the first bet insurance because they're not trying to max out like a $1,000 bet. This is put 50 down and get 250 in return. You're 5Xing out of the gate. Also, don't forget this. You could win the $50. You're not, people always are like, man, I'm giving them 50 and then I'm getting 250. No, you're betting 50 and you're getting 250. You could win your $50 bet and you're still getting 250. It's not get 250 if you lose. It's get 250 regardless. So if you're in a legal betting state, this is an awesome one. It's only going to be around till I think like the first or second week of the NFL season. Take advantage of it, get the money, and make sure that you're exploiting all these opportunities and bonuses. When football season comes around, you should have, if you have that luxury, you should have the money lined up to take advantage of every single sports book that you're not on yet, because that's when all their best bonuses come around every single football season. I've exhausted all my options, but you probably haven't. And if you haven't, Caesars will get you $250 on a $50 bet. And hopefully you win that as well. Anyway, link in the description and in chat if you're not on Caesars yet. It's a good one. Milwaukee, Chicago, Wade Miley, Jamison Taillon. All right. First things first, Eric. What are you doing with pitching in this game on either side? Is Taillon someone that stands out to you a little bit against Milwaukee today?
Not really. There's no ownership coming on these guys for a reason. They're more expensive than some of the guys that really allow you to do anything you want to with Atlanta. And then there's also just no strikeout upside with a guy like Wade Miley. I do like getting two pieces of Milwaukee going up against Taillon. There's at least some decent lefty power with Yelich. Sal Frelick, I guess, would be ready, but regardless, Rowdy Tellez in that grouping. He's had a terrible season, no doubt about it. Montecchio, there's enough of these guys that are showing up for me where I'm okay with it. Yeah, Sal Frelick, I was going to say, he definitely is a lefty. Wanted to double check that, but his number, he's somebody who's popping up as like a one-off two-man combination with Yelich. I'm okay with it going up against Taillon. I thought we were maybe going to get something. The total didn't come out early last night, but doesn't seem like this is any kind of a playing up for power spot. So yeah, I'm just going to be playing a little bit of Milwaukee, but no pitching from this one for me.
Okay. So this one, what is this, pretty clear cut for you? Straightforward? Yeah.
Yeah. Chicago, awesome. If you can make a couple of those pieces work, but they're pretty expensive. I'm not going to be getting to them pretty much at all. Yelich, I'm getting to a little bit, 50.7% hard hit percentage, ninth inning bump. Sal Frelick as well. William Contreras from a catching perspective, 47.8% hard hit percentage. Going up against Taillon, that's just okay by me. So, yeah, it's kind of a clear-cut spot. 259 ISO, 291 expected ISO for lefty power going up against Taillon. That's really what you want. He does a pretty good job of neutralizing righties. So, yeah, Yelich, Frelick, Tellez, Monasterio, those are the guys that I have a little bit of.
This next game is really interesting. I mentioned earlier when we generated those lineups with the lineup generator that we were getting a decent amount of Pittsburgh. That's obviously just the relation to these Atlanta bats as well. And, you know, you have Gossman, who's getting a lot of ownership and he's very expensive. But Zach Greinke. All right. So a couple of things that I want to point out to you and hear your thoughts. So number one, he has not, his XISO against righties is what? 178. Not great, not terrible, not the worst or close to what you're going to see on this slate. But 230 XISO to lefties definitely gives up power. Only 283 WOBA to righties, 399 to lefties. Lefties really have given him a lot of trouble, but it's not like he's keeping righties off the base paths either. What do you want to do with the Pittsburgh bats? We can get to Oviedo if you want to in a minute, but I want to start with these Pittsburgh bats today because they are number one in value percentage in our tool today for the top stacks.
It's tough to get away from. I'm going to be playing pieces of it. Jack Sawinski, my highest owned guy that I have on the Pittsburgh side, but you also get Bay leading off at 3K, Ji-Hwan Bae, who get the multi-positionality. You brought it up. You said the 230 expected ISO against lefties, just a 12.3% K rate too. One of my favorite things to do is when you get a guy like Jack Sawinski, who you know has crazy power, it's just been flying off the bat for him all season long, sitting with a 46.4% hard hit percentage and a 24.5 degree average launch angle. Another huge part of why he's just hitting the ball airborne and getting a lot of those home runs. When you run into a guy like Zach Greinke with just a 16.4% K rate and furthermore a 12.3% K rate against lefties, and you're going to run into more bats, especially guys like Jack Sawinski who strike out a ton. His strikeout rate at 33.7% on the season. I just play a lot of those guys. It seems like you're always running into positive leverage. He's kind of under-owned, I believe, looking in the 6-hole for Pittsburgh here today. A little underutilized. These other guys are a little bit more popular. Bay leading off, he probably should be there. You do have no Brian Reynolds in this lineup, which is kind of a bummer. But I guess it's probably not a bummer on this specific slate because that takes out a 5K bat that you otherwise would have had to pay for. You're now getting another cheapie down there. You have Sawinski, Palacios batting cleanup, and then Bay playing center field today. So Pittsburgh, they're really cheap. They're really easy to combine with Atlanta. If you're playing cash, I bet you're plucking at least one or two of these guys in addition to a 5-man Braves.
We're going to hit 200 likes. We're at 141. We're going to hit 200. It's going to have 59 likes in the next 25 minutes. Doable, right?
It's very doable, friends.
I just threw out a wild hot take that I knew people are not going to like in chat.
What'd you do?
So I loved the Chappelle Show. I grew up on it. Okay. Like as a teenager, I loved it. I think overall Key and Peele is better than the Chappelle Show.
I mean, nostalgia makes me want to hate you, but logic tells me that you're correct because
like I go back and watch Key and Peele skits all the time. Yep. This isn't to say that I don't go back and watch some of Dave Chappelle's. The Black White Supremacist, one of the best things ever. Clayton Bigsby, right? Mad Real World. You could go down the list. See them all. The Wife Swap. But I laugh harder at Key and Peele skits. I really do.
John Smith, BYU.
What's that?
The football skit at the very end.
Yeah. Look,
John Smith, BYU.
You're talking about the Key and Peele football one?
Yeah. Ohio State.
The thing is that people don't. I'm not knocking Chappelle. He has one of the best stand-up specials ever. The one in DC, I think it was. It's one of the best sketch shows ever. I just think Key and Peele's better. But people have this loyalty. And
like I said, it's the nostalgia makes me want to hate you for that take. But
right.
I do think Key and Peele, also think about it this way. Key and Peele, they had to tiptoe a little bit more than Chappelle did. They had less to work with. And I think they utilized it exponentially more. Like the level of things that you can do with that, they were very conscious of making sure that they didn't cross certain things. Chappelle had everything to work with, and it was still really, really funny. Absolutely love Chappelle, but yeah, the Key and Peele, the best skit by far is definitely when he's shaking hands with everybody as the president, right?
To me, it wasn't my favorite.
Oh,
my favorite is when he's the sex addict at a Sexaholics Anonymous meeting, and he's like this huge slovenly fat guy. If you haven't seen that one, check it out. Mike Davis said that Key and Peele is a ripoff of the Chappelle Show. That just tells me you've never seen Key and Peele.
You've never seen Key and Peele.
They're nothing alike.
No musical guests. There were musical guests on Chappelle's Show,
which was awesome, by the way.
Yep, they were great.
Yeah, but those two shows are nothing alike.
Yeah,
nothing alike.
Key and Peele's kind of soft. It has to be. Again, that's part of the deal.
They're two different things.
Yeah,
but they're not. They're nothing alike.
Yeah, and think about it this way too. Jordan Peele, great storyteller. Like I think a lot of those were like, I don't know, Chappelle, his acting, he's basically doing SNL and amping it up to a certain extent. And again, as a kid, I loved Chappelle's Show. That was like appointment viewing, Chappelle's Show. But Key and Peele, again, for what they were allowed to do, they just crushed it. It still can stand alone. Pretty hilarious now. You go back and watch stuff that isn't like, I smoke rocks, or is Wayne Brady gonna have to choke him? Like stuff like that is still like great, but like it's just, what I'm getting at.
Yeah, absolutely. Mike Davis said that Dave Chappelle said that in an interview. Yeah, but it's not like it's not. You could say that. He shouldn't have gone to Africa then. Should stay here. I love Dave Chappelle. I just think Key and Peele is absolutely hilarious.
I did see him and John Mayer walking around, like they were across the street, like in West Hollywood one time. But I was just like, oh, they're like best friends or something, I guess. Chappelle and John Mayer.
Oh, here, wild. I'll add to the hot take.
Okay. Level it up.
I truly love Key and Peele. I watch it all the time. I think Jordan Peele's movies stink.
But he has one. Get Out is undeniably was fine. Good.
It was so overhyped, man. Like it was good, but it
stop.
Well, you're going to tell me that was like some phenomenal motion picture that.
No, it wasn't like the greatest movie I've ever seen, but it was one of the better movies of that year. And also, I think what it did very well, like, I don't know, the meeting the guy outside, and then like, I can't believe that Williams girl, the one, John Williams is her dad or something. The guy was the news anchor. She was on Girls on HBO. She bugs me, but otherwise I thought all the acting was really, really good.
The acting was good. Get Out was fine. The other ones, I forget. There was another one where I saw them. I watched them all. I can't remember the names of all of them, but
no, wasn't that one of them or something?
Nope.
Nope.
Yep. Yeah.
That was a weird one.
All right, now that we've got some people riled up, let's
I think the best one that he did is the one with what is the one? Oh, we don't have time. My fault.
If you guys don't think, and Mike just put it, if you don't think the Key and Peele like terrorist hunters on the plane was one of the funniest skits you've ever seen, where they've got that is one of the, by the way, the guy sitting next to them on the plane in that skit looks like Dave Chappelle too. Go back and look. You'll see what I mean. It's pretty funny. He does. Looks like him. But
I know what I'm doing tonight.
By the way, guys, don't get upset. It's just an opinion. Back to baseball. People get
controversy is better than DFS talk. Sports Wiz has the idea. Hey, let's just stack Atlanta Braves and move on with our lives.
Yeah, man. And that's the one, Mike, that you have on the screen. Have you seen that, Mike? It's phenomenal. It's so good. All right. Where are we at? Oh, well, did you want to talk any KC bats against Oviedo, or should we spend some time? Okay, because then we'll go to Atlanta and Colorado, of course.
Yeah, so Kansas City's a team that I find to be really fun and contrarian. Plus 560, MJ Melendez was my favorite home run bet of the day. That was over on FanDuel for the people who can oblige. I think that you have a pretty decent opportunity. Nearly a 200 expected ISO, 199 to be exact, for Johan Oviedo against lefties on the season. And then you just get enough pop from some of these guys for cheap. MJ Melendez batting first today, leadoff today, 3,400. That's a decent enough piece of value to be getting to. You get Nelson Velasquez down there at 2,800 as well. You get Matt Duffy's terrible, but again, 2,100. There's some cheap guys to go with your Bobby Witts and your Sal Perez's. It's a team that I do find to be pretty appealing. If you're not going to play MJ Melendez, who's my favorite bat to be getting to, Matt Beatty, 2,300 first base. I know a lot of you aren't going to play Matt Olson for ridiculous reasons because it's left on left. You never say that about right on right, just throwing it out there. But Matt Beatty, 2,300, fits kind of nicely in some of those pieces as I was building out 3 max stuff. So we'll throw him out there as well. Just a team in Kansas City that against Oviedo, it's only 86 degrees, only 51% humidity. But Kaufman, it'll still play up for your doubles and such. Keep the line moving. I'd like 2 and 3 mans from this game.
Atlanta, Colorado, Coors Field, Bryce Elder, Austin Gomber. All right. Like, Gomber hasn't been terrible lately, and he is a reverse splits pitcher, but does it matter at all in this game? I mean, it really doesn't matter at all.
Nope.
Atlanta, this is the crazy thing. And somebody mentioned this earlier. We can dig into this instead of saying Atlanta bats are good. It was a comment earlier before I riled everybody up with my correct take, was that he's like, I forget who it was, so my apologies. I saw your name earlier and I just forget who it was. But he's like, it doesn't matter if you get Atlanta right. It's if you get the pieces right around them. And to a large extent, he's right. I mean, they're going to be popular. They still have a much higher top stack probability than their ownership, their aggregate ownership. They are a positively leveraged team, by far the highest stack score, by far the highest top stack probability, but they are also very, very expensive, as they should be in this matchup. What are some ways to get contrarian, be it with this Atlanta stack or with pieces around the Atlanta stack, to maybe be a little bit different? And what do you think are going to be the most popular builds with the Atlanta stack that you might get away from in tournaments?
So I think this is a phenomenal question, and something that I think using the lineup generator can help you reverse engineer what you want to do to possibly get a little bit different. We can see Brian Wu is really jumping up in terms of the board today in terms of top pitchers. So one, I would be taking Brian Wu out of some of those lineups. I have some pitch count concerns. He's 7,900. Turning him into Kyle Harrison for 3% less and saving $1,400 takes care of everything for me. You're getting a cheaper piece. He's got a higher top 2 value percentage, and it gives me the opportunity to stack up 5 mans of Atlanta with another cheapie that nobody is going to be clicking on, whether that's Avian Curry, Kyle Muller, for the love of God, to help us all, Adam Wainwright, even I'm getting to, the little tiny bit of, but I'm able to get to the 5 mans then pretty easily. Now, the one difficult thing that exists now with Atlanta today that we haven't had to think about for 2 weeks is Ozzy Albies is back in this lineup. That is a huge upside batting second, 5,700, and it removes, they were worse batters, but they were cheap batters. Now you have Kevin Pillar at 3,500. So if I'm trying to get different right off the bat, I'm going to keep Kevin Pillar out of some of those lineups, because I do expect for 5 mans that show up with Kevin Gausman, five mans that show up with Blake Snell, you're going to get other cheapies around it, and Kevin Pillar will by default get thrown in there. I think your means of being contrarian as things get closer to lock, because again, we're still 75 minutes away. I'm going to be updating, refreshing, making sure that I'm paying attention to this stuff and not just talking on my ass. But I do think Kevin Pillar ends up being the guy that I want to omit out of some of my 5 mans, because it seems as though that is the common denominator, somebody who is going way up the board. And there's legitimate, not pinch hit risk, I don't think they're going to here, but at 3.5K, being the only cheapie here from Atlanta, finding ways away from him and onto more Orlando Arcia, onto, some of these other guys that are in those mid 4Ks, Sean Murphy, everybody else is expensive. So Kevin Pillar, kind of the one guy that I'm not Xing out, but I am way under on, and I am way over on every single bat by a mile.
Who are your highest owned pitchers that aren't expensive? Kyle Harrison being one of them.
Yeah, so Kyle Harrison, by far my highest owned pitcher on the slate. Grayson Rodriguez, I'm just a little bit under, talked about it before. I do expect that I'm going to end up over because Brian Wu was showing up 38% in my first run, and I will not do that. If I have to manually remove it, Brian Wu, he is such a difficult thing for me to project today, because I do think he is probably capped at 80 pitches, absolutely tops, but then he has the third best matchup against righties and the best ballpark you could possibly be pitching in. So those are two major pluses, but I'm fighting my way onto Tyler McGill, almost double digits of him. Johan Oviedo, talked about the Kansas City bats being interested there, but I do have some Johan Oviedo 7,300. I have some Andrew Abbott, which is cheaper than the Kevin Gausman. I have almost no Kevin Gausman, which is terrifying. And then last guy that I'll throw in there had Adam Wainwright at 4%. So some decent enough cheapies that I'm able to surround.
We'll get to Brian Wu in that game in a second, but let's talk about Colorado bats for a moment, because it's obviously, Atlanta and then everybody else. They have a 26% top stack probability. Next closest team at 7, then 6, then 5.5, 5.5. There's nothing even remotely close. Doesn't mean you shouldn't be looking at some of those teams, but Atlanta's head and shoulders above everybody else. Colorado, 3.8% top stack probability, 4% aggregate ownership. How much of these Rocky bats do you want to get to against Bryce Elder today? They are still at Coors. They stink, but they are at Coors.
They are at Coors, and they're going up against a pitcher in Bryce Elder who isn't all that impressive. He's been doing a decent job of limiting some of the power, under a 165 ISO to both sides, 123 expected ISO against righties. Pretty decent marks, but it is Coors Field. You're getting up there at altitude, and anything can happen. What really sucks about the lineup from Colorado today, though, is you get the double catcher there in Hunter Goodman, so there's no real overlap there. You get 3 outfielders that you can only stack up in the outfield there. The only person with multi-positional eligibility really is Michael Toglia. Otherwise, you're playing every single player at that position only. That takes away a little bit of my interest from Colorado, but it's Coors Field. Mixing and matching a little bit of it or having just full Coors Field stacks, never a bad idea.
All right. Pat Fitz mentioned, Pat, tweet the winning screenshot to Stochastic HOF. If you had the avatar, 5,000 plus entries, finished top 3 in a field of 5,000 or more, tweet the avatar to us at Stochastic HOF. All right. And then email us as support at stochastic.com. That's how you get it. And if you guys are wondering what I'm talking about, Stochastic avatar. Use it. Stochastic.com/avatar. Finish top 3 in a field of 5,000 or more. Tweet us your screenshot at Stochastic HOF. You know what that means? I'll tell you. You're getting in the Hall of Fame, number 1. You're getting inducted into the Hall of Fame. We do it every week. It's a big event. It's a nice little ceremony there. Show off your wins for you, but also free month of Stochastic Plus Platinum, $120 value. All of our tools for the entirety of the month, including the premium Discord, including the lineup generator, the ownership tool, top pitchers, top stacks. Oh, and every other sport. So like if you're rocking it now and you come across a free month because you won, you're going to have a lot of free football tools as well, along with baseball and all of the other sports that are still ongoing. So rock the avatar on DraftKings, FanDuel, wherever it is you play. Make sure to have that. So when you do win, you don't just win money, but you're getting a lot of other stuff. Not to mention, you could be playing in the quarter arcade or the nickel or 50, doesn't matter. As long as it's more than 5,000 entries, doesn't matter how much you win. We give away free months to people who win less than the free month costs. So check it out. Yes, stochastic.com/avatar. If you're not repping it yet, get in on it. All right. Oakland and Seattle, Kyle Muller and Brian Wu. I mean, look, everything you said about Brian Wu makes perfect sense. But then on the other hand, it's like the Oakland A's have a 3.5 run implied total, tied for the lowest on the slate. It's in Seattle, arguably the best park in the league for pitchers. He's sub 8K. it's the pitch count that's most concerning. But boy, what a good matchup this is.
It's a really good matchup, but I want everybody to like really understand that me having trepidation here really revolves around what this Oakland A's lineup shows up at. And I'm just kind of going through it specifically. Seth Brown, Tony Kemp, I expect to be leading off. They've done this a number of times against strikeout heavy guys. I'm going to be paying a lot of attention to it because Brian Wu, 17.5% K rate against lefties. That isn't something I'm all that interested in backing. He's got a 31.6% K rate against righties. I do expect more than one righty to be in here. Brett Rooker. You've got Zach Geloff, who's just been awesome at the big league level so far. Exactly. Those guys, it's just like there's going to be opportunities for Brian Wu to run into strikeouts, but he only had 65 pitches his first start back, and he was out for 3 weeks, and he's shown some real promise, and the Mariners have played themselves into contention. I mean, this AL West is going to be awesome coming down to the end of it. I think I saw that Houston, over on Fangraphs, Houston had a 40% chance to win the AL West. Texas was around 40%, and Seattle was sitting around 20%. They need some of these young arms to really carry the load here, whether it's Miller or Wu, some of these other guys, obviously Gilbert too, but I can't imagine they're going to let him go more than 75 pitches. And with that intact, even with a 25.2% K rate for Oakland against right-handed pitching this season, I'm going to be paying very close attention to how many lefties get rolled out, because this could be the worst piece of chalk on the slate if the lineup comes out a certain way.
And yes, Jake, I do hate birds. You must have seen that video I posted.
Just important that they knew that right up.
Well, he said Laffy's afraid of birds. I hate him, dude. Yeah. I did that for my daughter. We went in there, there's like a petting zoo, and they had like bird feeding sticks. So I put her up on my shoulders and I was carrying her around. My wife's like, you got to go further up. And I was like, nothing's happening. And then they just start coming from all angles. Those fucking birds landing on my head and stuff. Not a fan. I don't like birds. Ugh. Don't like birds.
I get it. I hadn't really thought about it being something that I'm opposed to, but they're not my favorite. I will throw that out there. Are penguins birds? Penguins aren't birds, right?
I don't know. They can't fly.
Yeah.
But they have one mate for their entire lives.
That's adorable. See, we need to preserve penguins at all costs.
They even essentially bring them like a wedding ring in the form of a pebble.
It's adorable.
Yeah.
Dude, they're the best. They're truly the best. So if they're birds, I like them, and I really don't like other birds.
Birds are cool from a distance. Just don't come near me. Yep. That's all. You know?
Fair.
Do you like Seattle bats or any Oakland bats today before we move on to these final two games and turn this one over to live before lock?
I think Seattle's a little bit slept on here. Obviously, we've seen Julio Rodriguez, #confirmed good at baseball, 3.9% top stack percentage. They're a little bit of negative leverage, but I'm looking night slate. I'm definitely going to have a lot of them. Looking at the catcher, I mean, they get O'Keefe in there. That's a cheapie at 2,500. He's been terrible. Cal Raleigh's got a pinch hit at some point, but I think I throw his name out every single show. Dominic Canzone. Eventually, this dude's just going to rake at the big league level. I'm not sure when he's batting seventh there. There is pinch hit concern, though, and I don't know if we really want to be inheriting that. And then Dylan Moore against any lefty, confirmed lefty killers. So nice positional piece to kind of move around there at 3,300. But otherwise, really tough team to land on five-man stuff.
Let's talk about Cincinnati and San Francisco. This should be relatively easy. I mean, I don't know how much Andrew Abbott you intend on getting to. He's at around 2.5% ownership right now. We talked a lot about Kyle Harrison, so I don't want to go too deep into this. I already know our thoughts on this are pretty clear. The only question, and Josh and I discussed it on the strategy show this morning, is do you have concerns about his pitch count? If so, then we can get into that a little bit. If not, then we don't really need to elaborate any further.
I don't have as many concerns as what I do for Wu, and that should say something. He's 1,400 less. He had a 14.5 K per nine rate at AAA, and he ran into trouble. Like, he got himself into a little bit of trouble. They pulled him at 65 pitches, but he came in on short relief. He's now had 6 days of, he pitched the 22nd, so 5 days of rest. He's ready to rock here in this spot. I can't imagine going back to some of his AAA stuff here. Just seeing, regular pitch counts. So I'm I'm going to be just fine firing him up. The one concern I have for him is he has a 5.05 xFIP at AAA so far this season, 5.22 FIP, but the strikeout rate wins out. The price point wins out. Out of everybody sub 7K, I truly think he has the best strikeout stuff, which is, I mean, it's not comparing it to much. You're talking about Tyon and Wade Miley and God knows who else is going to show up in my lineups down here, but he's the one I feel weirdly the most confident with. And as long as he's starting, which you rarely get from some of these San Francisco pieces, you get them these long reliever type situations. I love Kyle Harrison, my highest owned pitcher by a mile today.
I think that's a good comp to Brian Wu. With the price point difference. I mean, obviously Wu has a good matchup, but it's not like Harrison has a bad matchup, and he certainly doesn't have a bad park. So,
no.
Yeah, I like it. But with that in mind, well, just quickly, because we got to get out of here. Any interest in Abbott? And
yes,
are you doing anything with bats in this game in San Francisco? No. Tough spot, low total.
Yep. I have 0 bats from this game. I think I had 1 share of Ellie De La Cruz, and I don't even like him. I don't think anybody at Stochastic really likes him at this point. Greg surely does not. I think he's really, really good. It's just people blowing him out of proportion to be some elite player, and then you're not getting a discount. It's a terrible ballpark. You get to steal a couple bags and then you're in trouble. But Kyle Harrison, lefties going up against Cincinnati here. They've got a 23.8% K rate, 9th worst in baseball, just a 96 WRC plus. It's a terrible park. Nothing but pitchers in this one for me. And I do love Andrew Abbott. Have been concerned about his xFIP from time to time, but it's starting to get back into that range. And then, God, he's got a crazy good K stuff. 24.5% to righties, 35.9% to lefties. You got to have at least a couple lefties, San Francisco, even with the platoon. So we'll see how that lineup rolls out too, but definitely have interest.
Let's wrap it up with Arizona and the Dodgers. Another kind of unappealing game. I mean, Bobby Miller's getting about 6% against Arizona. Not a good strikeout matchup, though. And then Zach Gallen. We do have him very high as far as positive leverage goes at 11.7% because he's only getting 1.5% ownership. But that means foregoing Kevin Gossman and Blake Snell. And already, if you're playing one of those guys, it makes Atlanta tougher to get to, which means getting the Zach Gallen means you're forfeiting a whole lot of pretty good stuff to play him against a good Dodgers offense.
Yeah, maybe I'm a sick person, but I am way over the field on the Dodgers today, and I'm over the field on Bobby Miller. Bobby Miller throws at 100. He's an absolute flamethrower. It's a terrible spot going up against Arizona. It's 100 degrees outside. There's a lot of reasons you should not be playing Bobby Miller, but one of the reasons that I think makes the most sense is that eventually this swinging strike rate has to come up. There's no way that he has a sinker four-seamer that move the way that they do, and then the slider change curve off of it, and he doesn't start to get better and better. Plus, his barrel percentage, just 6.4% with a 297 xWOBA. He limits walks. So if I expect the K rate to come up and he's been mitigating power all year long, that seems like a good spot to try to take some shots at really, really low ownership. So that's the Bobby Miller case. As for Zach Gallen, I have no interest going up against the Dodgers. I would on a lot of other slates. This is my absolute guy. But my absolute guy is going to get stacked up against today. He's got a 46.2% hard hit percentage and a 13.3 degree launch angle on batted balls in play. Guys like Max Muncy, Mookie Betts, Freddie Freeman. If I'm going to have lineups that can compete and, take the exact same line as I'm going to be stacking up Atlanta, I'm definitely going to have some stacks here up against Gala in 100 degree ball should be flying type weather here in LA.
3 quick things before we turn this over to Greg and Neil. First, follow Eric at Eric Lindquist, me at Laffy_D on Twitter, and shout out to Mike Lawrence for producing this show. Second, we are 13 likes away from 200, potentially 13 of you out there willing to show us some love here. And lastly, if you're looking to get that free money on Caesars, $50 bet turns into $250. And if you win, it could turn into a whole lot more than that on your $50 bet. Link in the description, link to all our tools, 50% off everything in the description and in chat on top of that. So hope you guys have a great rest of the night. Good luck. Stick around. Live Before Lock coming up next. We will see you back here tomorrow on the MLB Deeper Dive. Thanks, guys. Peace.
I did not see it last week.
Oh my god, you're gonna want to see it. It's very important.
All right, check it out.
What is happening, everybody? It's Monday. I hope you all had a great weekend. And now, time for me to break down another MLB slate with my friend Neil Orfield. As you guys come in, do us a favor, like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel. Also, we're sponsored by Caesars Sportsbook today, and they've got a great deal for you guys. So we'll be talking a little bit more about that as we go here. Also, very exciting stuff in my personal life. Bidet, it's in the bathroom. It's set up. It's all ready to go. I tweeted out a picture of it before. I've never been more disappointed to not have to take a shit, Neil.
Yeah, I hope that you eat enough to like really have to take a shit later. Okay, but here's what I'm confused about. All right, so it's off to the side of the toilet. Do you swing it over the bowl of the toilet? Or how does it work?
All right, so if you guys don't know what Neil's referencing, I posted a picture of the bidet on Twitter, but it's not like its own separate thing that's mounted in the bathroom. It's an attachment onto the toilet seat. So what you're seeing on the side there, Neil, is the knobs they use to control stuff like the pressure and temperature and whatnot. Okay. And then underneath, there's a thing that shoots the water up.
Okay, I think I see it now. Okay, that makes sense. Yeah. So it is all right there in the toilet. It's going to clean your ass for you within the toilet bowl. So it's just going to all drip right into the toilet. Yeah, that's pretty snazzy. What's the water temperature on this thing? I know we talked about it, like what you thought it was going to be, but it's like body temperature. Is that right?
It's like room temperature, I believe.
Okay.
But it's got different nozzles to control all these things.
Do you feel cleaner?
I haven't used it yet. So I've used bidets in the past, but this one I haven't used yet because it just got installed and I haven't had to take a shit since then.
Man, that is tragic. I guess we'll talk about it tomorrow after you have used it. Presumably you'll shit at some point between today and tomorrow.
Ideally, if not, we've got other problems coming.
Yeah, that's true.
So more updates coming. But I mean, I've used bidets in the past before, and I'm telling you, if you guys are not using one, you're walking around dirty and you're making a massive error with your life. Today, we've got a baseball slate to talk about, Neil, and just actually finished running my lineups through our Sims tool. So I'm curious to see what I ended up getting as far as the exposures in my top lineups for the day. We've got a lot to talk about in this slate, in particular a very chalky Atlanta Braves team that's also extremely expensive. So we're going to talk about what we're doing there. And then, of course, the pitching today as well. But I do think this is one of these slates, Neil, where we kind of have to talk about what we're going to be doing with the Braves because it informs what we're doing with pitching, right? Because these things don't exist in a vacuum, at least not for today, because if you're playing the Braves, they're so expensive that it does have to be something you take into consideration when it comes to your pitchers. So right out of the gate, Neil, I want to know, what are you doing with the Braves and how is that impacting your pitcher exposure?
So I think I'm probably going to end up with a lot of the Braves. I had started to try to do a to run my Sims before the show and then realized about halfway through that I had accidentally put my ownership caps in my projection column. So it's not coming out right at all. So I had to restart just before the show. I'm at 1,600 lineup. I'm only going to do 2,000 lineups in my Sims. But so I ran the lineup generator earlier. I was getting to a lot of the Braves with a lot of really ugly pitchers. The way that I'm doing it is I'm running my Sims under the assumption that the Braves go higher owned than we expect, because we're expecting relatively like reasonable ownership for the Braves. I'm not like pushing up crazy high, but I'm giving them like a 20% ownership on Braves 5-man or primary Brave stacks instead of the 16%. Last time I checked, we had them at 16%, and also set my individual player ownership caps a little bit higher than I usually do to allow for that, also to allow for more Brave stacks. I just want to see what will happen if I do push up that Braves ownership just a little bit to see if I spread out my exposure a little bit. What's happening with you? What are you getting with the Braves?
So I am a little bit overweight to the field on the Braves. I have them 19% of my lineups are Brave stacks. We currently have them projected for 16% ownership as a team. So more or less, I think the ownership is warranted. Here's where I'm going to disagree with you a little bit, though, and why I think this team is going to get about the ownership that's expected. The cheap pitching is not great today. And there are some good high-end pitchers. The reality is there is no way to stack the Braves and pay up for the high-end pitching. So with that in mind, I do think the Braves are going to come in where they're projected, which is not, not low. They're projected for 16% ownership as a team on a slate of this size. That's pretty significant. But it is a team that we have projected with by far the best odds being the top scoring team on the slate. So just by the odds of what is their chance of being a top scoring team relative to ownership, I do think they're going to be under-owned. But then you also have to consider what we're going to be doing with the pitchers, which is what we're going to introduce right now into the conversation, because we have two pitchers at the high end that are both projected for some ownership, one much more than the other. Kevin Gausman, 11,200 is projected for 31% ownership. And then Blake Snell at 10,800 is projected for 16.6% ownership. Far more favorable matchup for Kevin Gausman at home against the Washington Nationals, whereas Blake Snell is going to be on the road against the St. Louis Cardinals, which is not the most difficult matchup in the world, but it's not as easy as the matchup that Gausman finds himself in. So, all things being considered, Neil, Gausman being a little more expensive than Blake Snell, projected to be more popular, also just projects better from a fantasy point standpoint. Who do you prefer? If you're rostering one of these guys in a large field tournament, are you more apt to go to Kevin Gausman or Blake Snell?
I think if I were just playing one lineup, I'd be more inclined to go to Blake Snell, just because he has like just over half the ownership that Gausman has. Obviously, as you said, much better matchup for Gausman. He does have 5% better chance of being a top two pitcher than Blake Snell. But when you factor in that ownership, there's just we've got positive leverage on Snell. We have slight negative leverage on Gausman. They both look great. I still I'd be perfectly fine getting to Gausman. It's not like he's getting to 70-80% ownership. He's still only at 31% ownership, which Kevin Gausman against the Nationals, like that is actually extremely reasonable ownership, which is maybe the Braves effect there. But I think if I was just going to one of them, it would probably be Blake Snell that 17% ownership for Blake Snell is pretty nice. So slight preference for Snell, but honestly, they both look great to me. Do you see it any differently?
I'm underweight to the field on both of them. And a lot of it has to do with the Braves. While I said before, I'm slightly overweight to the field on them as the most popular stack on the slate. Something else to consider as well is that even in lineups where I'm not necessarily stacking the Braves, I have a bunch of these hitters in there as one-offs. So I'm getting to a lot of these guys, just exposure to them in general. So with that in mind, I'm underweight to the field on both Gausman and Snell. I have more exposure to Kevin Gausman, but neither of these guys are my priorities at pitching today. So we'll talk about some cheap guys that are like mixing in as well, but I'm underweight to the field on both of them. Is that going to be the case for you? Or are you making a stand with either of these pitchers? Or is there a different high-end pitcher that maybe you have your eye on?
So my guess would be that I am going to be with you, that I'm going to be underweight to both of them. I don't know. Like there's a possibility, because I pushed up my Braves exposure, there's a possibility that I get away from the Braves and end up on the higher end pitchers and with some cheaper bats. I think that I would prefer to go that way. Actually, I think I would prefer to go to the high end pitchers in my non-Braves lineups. I think I'd like to flip it entirely rather than like going to the other expensive teams. I think I'd rather just flip the entire build and go to expensive pitchers, cheap bats. All right, I have done my 2,000 lineups are done now, and I'm just going to run these 2,000. So I think I'm good to go. But yeah, I think that I would like to be like at least close to the field. Like I feel like the field has it about right on these guys. Are you like, how far into weight to the field are you getting on the expensive guys?
Well, I am going to have to do one more run with the updated ownership, which could definitely change some of this a little bit. But at least as of right now, I am well underweight to field on both of them. So I don't imagine that's going to change. I have Gausman in, let's see, where was Gausman? So I have Gausman in 19% of my lineups at the moment, and I have Snell in 10%. So pretty decently underweight to the field, about half of the exposure to both of them relative to what the field is at.
Yep, that seems that was a good call out. That like, I think you're right. Like I was thinking, like, man, the Braves and Coors look so good that we're probably going to see higher ownership on the Braves than what we're anticipating, which is why I pushed them up a little bit. But just given these price tags, like, is it even possible? Like how easy is it? It's so difficult to get to these five mans, with Acuna being 7,000, Olsen being 6,900, Austin Riley 6,300. We even have the catcher at 5,900 and Sean Murphy. Like, it is so hard to get to these Braves. Maybe I made a mistake by pushing that. Maybe I should have pushed up the other teams to force myself to more Braves, but we'll see. My guess is I'll still get more Braves. in a lot of my lineups.
Like I said, I have to we just got an ownership update a couple minutes ago, so I'm going to rerun my lineups with the most recent ownership, and I'll see if anything changes. Like, it'll be like little bits and pieces that change, but it's not like all of a sudden Gausman's going to be in like 50% of my lineups or anything like that, just because there's been a little bit of ownership tweaks here and there. Any of these other pitchers on the high end that really standing out to you for any reason? Either you think they're going under owned, you think they're a good pivot, good leverage, anything like that amongst other high end pitchers?
I mean, Zach Allen is interesting at 1.5% ownership, but man, it's such a tough matchup with the Dodgers. He does have positive leverage, so I will say 13% chance to be in a top 2 pitcher at 1.5% ownership certainly stands out. Like that is pretty massive positive leverage. Also, even a 3% chance to be in a top 2 value. So like even from that metric at 10,500, Zach Allen looks a little bit under owned. So if you wanted to go there, you certainly could. Obviously not a comfortable click at all against the Dodgers. I don't know that I'm going to end up actually getting to any Gallen, but from that perspective, he at least looks interesting. And he's one, I think I actually gave him as I was running my lineup. So the way I've been doing Sims is I depending on how many I do, I start with only like 500 just to see like what kind of exposure am I getting to different players. And then I actually, when I'm doing Sims, adjust projections to make sure I get to some of these pitchers that we have that are not getting ownership, just to make sure he's actually in my player pool. Looks like I did do that for Zach Allen. So maybe I will get to some. I think in my initial crunch, I was getting to 0 Zach Allen, so he wouldn't have even been represented in my candidate lineups in the Sims. So I forced him into some. So I'll be interested to see if I actually get to some Zach Allen, because he does look really interesting at such low ownership. Those are the only 3 that we have that are double digits. I mean, Kenta Maeda against Cleveland looks pretty good. That's a pretty nice matchup against Cleveland. Maeda at 9,200, 12% projected ownership, 15% chance of being a top 2 pitcher. Wouldn't mind getting there either. I guess Andrew Abbott also at 9,800, 3% ownership, 12% chance of being a top 2 pitcher. All of these expensive guys relatively low owned, which maybe that's the Braves effect, because everybody, even if they're not playing full Brave stacks, are probably trying to get some of these Braves in their lineups. So all of these high-end guys going fairly low owned.
Here is going to be the most popular build on the entire slate. It is going to be Braves as a stack with Grayson Rodriguez and Brian Wu as the pitcher. So right now, if you go through our ownership projections, we have 2 pitchers that are cheap. Well, actually, I should say 3, because we also have Kyle Harrison from the Giants, who's projected for 25% ownership, but he's kind of in a different price tier. So I want to start here by talking about the value pitchers in like the 7 to 8K range, Neil, because we have Brian Wu projected for 31% ownership at 7,900. Great match for him against the Oakland A's. And then we've got Grayson Rodriguez at 7,500, projected for 40.2% ownership against the Chicago White Sox. Now, Grayson Rodriguez is also coming off a start where he was really, I forget the exact number, but some of the recent starts for Grayson Rodriguez, he has been uber popular. So I don't doubt he's going to be this popular again. And this is how people are going to get to the Atlanta Braves. They're going to roster Brian Wu. They're going to roster Grayson Rodriguez. Both of them are really popular. Do you like the ownership on Grayson Rodriguez and Brian Wu, or do you think the numbers are too high on them?
Yeah, so pretty interesting. So I'm not playing 150 lineups today, but I have found that it's probably a more interesting conversation to talk about what I get in my top 150 in the Sims. Brian Wu, I'm getting to 33% exposure in that top 150. So I am getting there right with the field on Brian Wu, actually a little bit over Brian Wu. And that's after pushing Atlanta up. So like thinking that I would probably get to less Atlanta, given that I have more exposure to the full stacks, they would do worse in the Sims. I'm still getting to a ton of Atlanta, even giving them higher ownership here, and I'm still getting to a ton of the cheap pitchers. So Brian Wu is actually my second highest exposed pitcher now. Kenta Maeda, interestingly, Kenta Maeda is my highest exposed pitcher now. I have 38% Maeda, which I was not fully anticipating. But yeah, Brian Wu second for me, Grayson Rodriguez third for me at 31% exposure. So yeah, I'm getting to both of those guys a lot. But yeah, still I'm also getting to 23% Gausman. So I'm surprised to see how much I'm getting to both the Braves and the expensive pitchers, but clearly in different lineups here.
Yeah, I'm looking at my lineups, and I mean, we're using a lot of the same process, so no surprising. Relative to ownership, I prefer Brian Wu to Grayson Rodriguez. I have nearly identical exposure to the two of them. Actually, am slightly underweight to field on Wu, which then does get me, pretty underweight to the field on Grayson Rodriguez, because with him being projected for 40% ownership. I'm just under 30% of him right now. So good amount underweight to the field. And I do think this is the ideal cash game combination. So I think load up on the Braves, go to Brian Wu, go to Grayson Rodriguez. But I do think one of the easiest ways you can differentiate your lineup, say if you're making a Brave stack, include a pitcher who's not Grayson Rodriguez or Brian Wu or Kyle Harrison for that matter. And that's where I think we should talk about next, because I mean, guys like Brian Wu and Grayson Rodriguez, I understand why the field's getting there a bunch. They both have good matchups. They both have strikeout upside. They're both really cheap. It's easy to fit the Braves when you get these two pitchers together. But if you're building a lineup that does not have one of these and you're trying to roster a pitcher in like the 7K-ish range, Neil, anywhere from, like 8K to 7K, do you have a pitcher that you like as a pivot off of these guys more than anybody else?
So if I'm not playing Wu or Rodriguez, all right. John Gray looks really good. 8,100 coming in at 6% ownership, 10% chance of being the top two pitcher. Some interest there. Kyle Harrison against Cincinnati in San Francisco is pretty nice spot there. 25% projected ownership. So the field definitely getting to Kyle Harrison as well. But we've got him at a 15% chance of being a top two value pitcher, 7% chance of being a top two pitcher. Obviously helps a lot in paying up for the Braves if you play Kyle Harrison. Both of those two look pretty interesting to me. There's not a lot, as you said, like it is ugly playing any of these cheap guys. Don't love playing any of them. So not really. I'm not really getting away from the chalk all that much. Let me see if there's anybody else that I'm getting to significantly. Are you getting to any of these cheaper guys in any significant amount?
Yeah, so it's actually not the 8K range where I'm pivoting as much. It is on the cheap end. There are a couple of guys that are more in like the puntish range in the 6K that I do like getting to them well overweights the field. I just kind of group a handful of these guys together. Jamison Tyone, Tyler McGill, who's projected for 7% ownership, who in the past has been a solid starting pitcher. Brutal match for him against the Texas Rangers, but there is some strikeout upside there. And most importantly, he's projected for for low ownership, but also no salary there. He's $5,800 on DraftKings. So these are the guys that I think is most reasonable to differentiate some of your Brave stacks with. If I go through my exposures, I mentioned McGill, Tyone's another one. Those are really the two ones that stand out to me the most. So I'm not just giving you guys a million names here, but across my 150 lineups, those are two players that I'm a little bit more than double the field on. Tyler McGill being one, and then the other one, like I said, there is Jamison Tyone, and it's just price point combined also with the fact that the ownership is low on these guys. Tyone is a pretty good matchup against the Milwaukee Brewers. He's $6,900 projected for 6% ownership. So those are ways that I think it makes sense. Save salary, differentiate some lineups. Anything else on the low end that you want to talk about or stands out to you at all, Neil?
No, so I am with you. I have 13% McGill. Also, I have 7% Tyone, 7% Johan Oviedo. So there's nobody that I'm getting to in any like really significant amount. It is, the chalk guys are the guys I'm going into the Wu and the Rodriguez. But I'm right with you. I'm a little bit over the field on McGill. I have 18% Kyle Harrison, so I'm actually a little bit below the field there, but nobody that I'm getting like any huge number on these low owned pitchers.
Yeah, and let's talk about Kyle Harrison because we have not really talked about him other than me just mentioning that he's fairly popular, 25% ownership. He's very cheap today. So let's do a little bit of a dive into his numbers if Fangraphs will cooperate with me right now. And then we could see, why is it that people are getting to Kyle Harrison? So Kyle Harrison is making his debut in the big leagues this year. And you guys could also see that Mike has put some of the data for Kyle Harrison up here on the screen. And pretty much nothing at the big league level that we have to talk about, right? He's thrown, 3 innings or something like that this season as a major league pitcher. Let's look at his minor league numbers. Let's also look at his acumen as a prospect because he is one of the top ranked prospects in baseball, number 1 ranked prospect in the Giants organization. Fangraphs had him ranked 17th overall in all of baseball coming into this year. So this is a pitcher with a pretty strong pedigree. Now, with that said, his minor league numbers, not great from a run allowance perspective. 4.66 ERA, 5.22 FIP. We should note that he pitches in an extremely hitter-friendly environment in the minor leagues. Here's what stands out about Harrison, though, Neil. His strikeout rates in the minor leagues, 35.6% this year, and it was 36.4% last year in Double-A. This guy generates a ton of swing and misses. He's a really, really well-regarded prospect. His fastball, at least from what we've seen so far of him in the big leagues, which, is a very small sample size, but I do think that it's at least worth noting that if he has an average fastball velocity right around 95 miles per hour in those 3 innings, it stands to reason that's about how hard he throws the baseball. So it seems like Kyle Harrison has good stuff. He's generating a ton of strikeouts in the minor leagues. I do think that he's worthwhile as a punt play. I'm right around in line with the field, so no crazy stand there. I think the field has it right. Somebody to consider in cash games, though, I still think you guys should be going to Woo and then also to Grayson Rodriguez if you're building a cash lineup right now. What would be the cash lineup combination you would say people should go to at pitcher on DK?
Yeah, I'm with you. I think on Harrison, allowing you to pay up for bats. Yeah, those strikeout numbers are insane. It's just looking at, and that's over a pretty significant inning sample size also for Harrison. So I think he would be in there. It feels weird to say that about a pitcher making is it his second major league start or is it his debut? I thought I saw numbers for him. Yeah, so it's for a pitcher who has like zero experience in the majors, feels weird to put him into your cash lineup, but I do think it makes sense today in this particular spot for a pitcher that has such pedigree. I think you go with Harrison, and then the second pitcher I'd go to probably Grayson Rodriguez. Maybe it'd be between those three. That would be between Rodriguez, Woo, and Harrison for me. I think it would probably end up being Rodriguez because he's a little bit less expensive and a little bit higher owned. You could make a case for Woo in the matchup with Oakland, I think, but it would probably be Rodriguez and Harrison for me. Is that what you said also?
I said Rodriguez and Woo.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense to me too. I think it's those three are in contention for me.
And then something else also that I want to make sure is, do we hit on the Discord here? If you guys have any questions for me, at me in Discord. And here's the question. Want to make sure before we moved on to FanDuel pitching that we addressed the question we got in here from Einsteinium. He wants to know, is Gray a reasonable pivot off of Brian Woo? Eric mentioned concerns about his pitch count. If I'm going to pivot off of these pitchers, what I'm doing is I'm just going cheaper. Like Jon Gray is not somebody who is a prime option of mine. If we go through Jon Gray's recent pitch counts, we could go ahead and get an idea for what we'd expect. And also, Jon Gray's just not been great this year. I know the ERA is not terrible, but his strikeout rate is way down. He's benefited from a lot of good luck as well. Recent starts for Jon Gray, he is gone. I'm actually not all that concerned about his pitch count. Last 3 starts, 83, 92, and 87 pitches. Like, wrong Gray, Mike. Jon Gray. Let's see. Do we think they're related, though, Josiah Gray and Jon Gray?
Seems like they must be.
That's what Jon Gray looks like. Go back to Josiah Gray, Mike. Josiah Gray. All right, so they're probably cousins or something like that.
Yeah.
And I don't really love either of them for today. So I don't have concerns about Jon Gray's pitch count, Einsteinium. I have concerns with Jon Gray's overall ability as a pitcher this year, because we go ahead and look at Jon Gray's stats. Like I mentioned, the strikeout rate is down. I'm pretty sure it's the worst strikeout rate of his career, but I'll fact check myself right here. 20.6%. Yeah, out of any full year he's pitched in the big leagues, this is the lowest strikeout rate he's ever had of his entire career. And then you go look at the other numbers. Sure, he's a 3.76 ERA, but a 4.33 expected ERA, a 4.13 FIP. So the fact that he's benefiting from a really low BABIP, 287 this year, 308 for his career, his left on base rate, 75%, 70.3% for his career. You would expect him to have a fair talent level, like just over a 4 ERA. You combine that with the lack of strikeouts, and not somebody I love getting to today. If you want to pivot, go a little bit cheaper. I think that's the way to go.
Eric clarifying in chat that it was Brian Woo's pitch count that he has concerns with.
Oh, okay. I misunderstood. I thought that he was saying Gray's pitch count. I misunderstood the question, Einsteinium. So as far as Brian Woo, yes, I do think that there are some pitch count concerns. Here's what alleviates it, though: the price point and the matchup. Because Brian Woo was last time out, went 4 innings. He was capped at 4. I expect today we're probably getting 5 innings out of him. 5 innings against the Oakland A's at this price point, I think, is reasonable.
How many pitches? I always struggle to find the how many pitches he threw last time out number.
Yeah, so I'll pull it up right now. Brian Woo in his last start had how many pitches?
remember
So
talking
Brian
about this
Wu in
last
his
time.
last start went for 65 pitches. Time before that was 83. His last start was coming off the injured list. So today I'd expect something like 5 to 6 innings, and then probably somewhere in the neighborhood of like 80, 85 pitches.
Yeah, that seems reasonable.
If he was more expensive, if he was more expensive, it would be an issue for me. But at this price point, the matchup against Oakland, I think he's fair. I think he's fairly safe.
Yep, agreed. Yeah, I still think he's a fine play. Obviously, you'd like it if he didn't have any pitch count concerns, but they're not so stringent that I'm like shying away from him.
Yeah. So if he was going like right at 65 like he did last time, I would be a little bit more concerned. But let me just double check and see if there was any beat reporters that threw out like a specific pitch count number for today. And let's see. So
hypothetically, how many fantasy points would you have to know Brian Wu is going to get today? Like if you just had a crystal ball, you knew exactly how many DraftKings fantasy points he was going to get. How many would it be for you to just lock him in?
To lock him in?
Yeah.
Anything over 20 at his price point.
Do you think that's in his range of outcomes?
Yes.
Yeah, I think it is too. He's got 8 strikeouts he could certainly get. Yeah, I think he's a fine play at the ownership. I'm still going there.
And this isn't one of the guys I'm taking a stand on. You know, I'm right around the field on him. I'm just under that 30% mark. So I don't really have an issue with him, but I'm not going like crazy overweight to the field on him either. The pitchers, once again, that I said that I am going overweight to the field to for cheap. I have more exposure to Jameson Taillon than the field, and I also have more exposure to Tyler McGill on the cheap end. Both project for single-digit ownership. I have them just under 20%. So those are the guys that I'm kind of differentiating some of my lineups with. Anything else you want to talk about at pitcher on DK, Neil? If not, we'll talk about the FanDuel pitching options.
Not pitcher specifically. I'm more curious. Are you going to let other people use your bidet?
Let other people? I mean, like, what am I?
Like
your
family, your family lives in your house. Like a lot of your family lives in your house with you. Are you going to let them use your bidet?
If somebody is using my bathroom, I'm not gonna be like, hey, no using the bidet.
Okay, so it's not like the drum set thing, you know, and the in Step Brothers, for example, like where it's just like, no, do not touch my bidet. It's somebody using your bidet. Okay, that's good to know.
But the other thing too is, how could I even police it?
It would be tough. You could try though. I mean, you could say, I don't know, it looks dirty. Something got on the bidet. What happened here? I don't know.
So in general, I am the only one who uses my bathroom, but every once in a while, somebody comes in and uses my bathroom as well. I'm not going to follow them in and watch them and be like, hey, no turning that dial.
All right. Just checking.
This is a good. Wait. SportsWiz actually has the best idea. Put a camera in it. There we go. Perfect solution. I put a camera in the bathroom.
Yeah, that seems reasonable. That seems like a reasonable thing to do.
Yeah. Oh, and you know what? I could even test it. I'll invite a bunch of people over for the weekend, and just to set them up, I'll put a camera in.
Are you going to tell them that there's a camera in there?
No, because I want it's a gotcha.
Yeah, you got to know.
This is the best way. Footage, and then I'll review all the footage at the end of the night.
Yeah, no, this is totally reasonable. I like that suggestion. I don't see any flaws with that suggestion.
All right, there we go. So there's ways I guess we could police it, but anybody free use of the bidet, free use. Anybody you come over one day, anybody wants to hang out, sleep in the guest room or whatever, you're free to come use my bathroom and the bidet as well.
What do you think of Bobby Miller? Since you asked me about other pitchers, Bobby Miller looks okay. Kind of a fine matchup with Arizona. 8,800 pitching for the Dodgers, more likely to get the win. Seems okay. Yeah, not a huge like somebody that I feel I must play, but looks interesting.
The problem is the matchup, the price point, and what I generally want to do with offense on the slate. So, like, he's not really somebody who is an important piece of my lineups or anything like that. And also, Bobby Miller's a guy who's, like, pretty regularly ended up being more popular than he was expected to be this year. But all that aside, just tough matchup on the road in Arizona. Also, the fact that how expensive he is, not somebody I'm dying to play.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, I don't see anybody else that I feel the need to talk about here.
All right, so let's go ahead and look at FanDuel now. And what's different about the FanDuel pricing on the high end is we've got Andrew Abbott, Zach Allen, Blake Snell, and Kevin Gausman all projected for, I shouldn't say projected, all priced over $10,000. But of these three, the only one projected to be popular is Kevin Gausman. So there's a really big difference between Kevin Gausman and Blake Snell on DraftKings and FanDuel, because Gausman is 21% owned on FanDuel, whereas we have Blake Snell sub 10% owned. So with that in mind, Neil, if you're paying up for one pitcher on FanDuel, do you like getting to Blake Snell for less than half the ownership of Kevin Gausman? Is there somebody else you like? Would you rather just go cheap? What stands out the most to you about the high-end pitching on FanDuel?
Honestly, like if I'm hand building and I have 10,900, I'm just going to Gausman. Like he feels so much safer than Snell, and 20% ownership feels pretty reasonable. I mean, I know it's a one pitcher site, so it should be lower ownership. Yeah, if I have the salary, I'm probably just going to Gausman. But if I have 10,200 left or 10,400 left over, I'm not going out of my way to switch from Snell to be able to pay up for Gausman. So I'm totally happy to play either of them if I have the salary. But I'm just playing whoever fits in there. I would rather play Gausman than Snell. He's certainly safer, probably has higher upside as well. So I would rather play Gausman, but not going out of my way to get to Gausman over Snell in the event that I don't have the salary for Gausman is essentially what it would come down to for me. Don't think that I want to go to Zach Gallen. It's just not necessary. He's 10,700, right behind Gausman in price tag, more expensive than Blake Snell. I get it from an ownership perspective. He's coming in at under 1% ownership, but such a tough matchup with the Dodgers. I don't really see myself going there. Could see myself going to Kenta Maeda, similar to DraftKings. He's just way less expensive than those guys and has a nice matchup with Cleveland. So he's somebody on the high end that I would also consider. But I'd prefer to just go to Gausman, Snell, and then it'd be Maeda if I want to go down a price tier.
And also, I think it's really important to talk about Maeda on FanDuel because he's my favorite tournament pitcher that we have there. Because if you look at the pricing here, Brian Wu, $7,800 on FanDuel. The pitch count for me is more of a concern on FanDuel than it is on DraftKings because you run into the situation where I don't think he's very likely to get the 6-inning quality start bonus. Right. So we look at Brian Wu on FanDuel. I think he's way overowned at 16% ownership. And Grayson Rodriguez is 19%. Kenta Maeda, $8,900 is projected for 7% ownership. Grayson Rodriguez at $8,700 projected for 19% ownership. But we have Kenta Maeda projected better than Grayson Rodriguez with a slightly better chance being the top scoring pitcher on the slate. So with that in mind, I think the best pivot you can make on FanDuel, instead of playing Brian Wu or Grayson Rodriguez, go to Kenta Maeda, pay a couple $100 more than what you'd pay for Grayson Rodriguez, getting a third of the ownership, and we actually do have him projected better.
Yeah. I like that call for sure. People in chat pointing out that Greg is doing well enough to get a bidet, but not well enough to move out of his parents' house. I feel like there was a movie where that kept on being like a recurring
but the other
theme.
Thing too is my parents my parents sold their house and moved in downstairs at my house.
I know. That's actually what I was going to say. That was what the movie, the recurring theme was. People kept on saying, "You live with your parents," and the character had to keep on reiterating, "No, they moved in with me. I'm not living with them. I'm taking care of them." I don't remember what it was though. It was either a TV show or a movie or something. But yeah, so Greg's parents actually moved in with Greg. He's doing fairly well there. But also the bidet was a gift, so like he didn't pay for it.
True. Well, also from my mom for my birthday, she got me the bidet. So also my parents are older. They're in their mid 60s. They're retired. So they have a place in Florida, but they don't have a place to stay up here because the house that I grew up in, they sold it. As if anybody gives a shit about my family living situation.
I think it's a fascinating. I actually think people do care. Like this, your family could be like a TV show. Like I feel like it could be a reality TV show. All of the Ehrenbergs moving in together into the same house. I think it's fascinating.
Well, so I mean, the other day, my dad did ask me how to use ChatGPT, which
you told me this story. You told me this story already,
but I didn't tell the audience.
You did not.
So my dad asked me how to use ChatGPT, which is a red flag because, like, number one, I don't know how my dad has even heard of ChatGPT, let alone would be interested in using it. So he shows me his iPad. He's not on ChatGPT. He's on some chat website, which most likely hosts porn in some way. So it has chat in the name, but it is not ChatGPT. It's just some random chat website. So he asked me how to get him onto ChatGPT. I don't ask any questions, though. I just get him all set up on ChatGPT. And he gets in. We make an account for him. He's logged in. And then my dad, who doesn't type, he only uses the voice messaging to type stuff like when he's doing text message or anything. Sure. So then he he says into his iPad, write a speech for best friend's mom dying. So what ends up happening is his best friend's mom died. He had to write a speech. He didn't want to do it, so he had ChatGPT do it for him. So these are the fun things that I get when I have my whole family living here. So
and this was nice. Like his childhood friend whose mom he had not seen in years.
Yes. Right? Yeah.
But which reminded me of, it was Schitt's Creek. That was another thing that, as you were telling the story, I was like, this reminds me of something. The TV show Schitt's Creek. The guy, the father, I forget what his name is now. The guy with the big eyebrows gets asked to give a speech at a funeral where he didn't know the person who died. The person was a fan of his, and he had to give a speech at the person's funeral. So kind of reminded me of that. Eugene Levy. Yeah, that's right. That's right.
So so my parents will be here, like, because they have a place in Florida. So during the summer, it's really hot in Florida. So they come stay here for a few months in the summer, and then the rest of the year they'll just be down in Florida. So it'll be a good situation. Then also, I get to see them a few months a year when the weather is really hot. So it'll be good. I'm pretty happy with the situation. I get that it's not for everybody, but it's for me. I get along really well with my family. FanDuel pitching anyway, just to wrap it up, Kenta Maeda, my favorite overall pitcher on the entire slate from a tournament perspective. For cash games, I'd say pay up for Gausman if you can. 20.5%. Like, he's going to be super popular in cash games. Also, the salary cap doesn't exist on FanDuel. It's a myth. It's super easy to find the flexibility to pay up for pitching. So I'd say go with Gausman. FanDuel cash games tournaments, Kenta Maeda, my favorite tournament option over there. Let's build some lineups in the lineup generator now. Mike, would you mind pulling that up? Let's build some lineups in the lineup generator. If you guys haven't checked this out yet, it is the most beginner-friendly tool that we have here over at Stokastic.com. And you could sign up for the first time for less than $5 when you sign up using the link that we have below. And what you're able to do in this, which we're about to show you on screen here, you build lineups, up to 20 of them, FanDuel, DraftKings, whichever site it is you prefer. You export them directly into the site from there. And then also something we've seen a lot of people have success with as well, using the lineup generator. Some people who like hand building lineups, but still use the data available here, they'll build lineups and then they'll mix and match some of the players they get the most exposure to and use that to hand build some lineups. So let's go ahead and look at what we ended up getting to as far as exposure goes. Neil, I know you built some lineups earlier. So Mike, if you could just save 20 of them for us. I'm curious, what is it that you got the most exposure to earlier in the day? And is it, well, I see Mike's already got the 20, probably already saved from a previous show that he was doing. Yeah. But what were you getting the most exposure to earlier? And does anything surprise you on screen right now?
I'm surprised to see 75% Acuna at 7,000. I don't think that I had that much. I think that my highest exposed player earlier was like 55%, and it was one of the cheaper bet. It might have been Orlando RC at 44.6K, so still not cheap. But I was getting to more of the cheap bets. It was still a lot of Braves at the top, but it was certainly not Acuna and Riley at the top. That is surprising to me to see how much we're getting of the expensive Braves in particular.
Yeah, Acuna, Riley, and then in return, considering we're getting to all of these expensive bats, I assume we're going to be cheaper at pitcher. Brian Wu, the most rostered. Mike, if you could scroll down a little bit on our pitcher exposures. Yeah, Grayson Rodriguez, although still 25% of Grayson Rodriguez when he's projected for 40% ownership. That is, fairly lower owned on him relative to the field. Tyler McGill, somebody I talked about, pretty similar to I have, about 20% of him. We've got Harrison right around even with the field. Gausman, we came in underweight to. Got to Kenta Maeda with it. Jameson Taillon, the other cheap pitcher that I like, came in overweight to him. Funny, that's really close to what I have in my own lineups of Taillon as a pivot option on the low end as well. So this is not too like I'm not getting this aggressive with like Braves stacks, but 65% Braves, 60% Pirates. Those are the two teams I have the most exposure to as a stack, and the pitchers aren't all that different from what my pitcher exposure looks like.
Yep, looks similar to mine also. Those are the two stacks that I'm getting to the most of. Brian Wu, I think one of my most exposed. So yeah, I'm also very similar to what we're getting here, which is always a good sign to me that we're doing things right. If what we're getting is the same as what, obviously we're using similar data, the same data, but ultimately it's a good sign that we're getting similar kind of things.
We have a super chat here from Guitar Z-Man 2470 wants to know, how do I get Fantasy Cruncher to spit lineups out faster? do the crunches individually and then merge them together. Because if you're building out, like 5,000 lineups, 2,000 lineups at once, what I find is it generally slows down like the 700-ish mark. You'll start to see Fantasy Cruncher build the lineups a little bit slower. So what I do is I find for each individual slate, like when it is that it starts to slow down the lineup build. So like for me, for today, it's right around 700, 750 lineups. So build 750 at a time. Then what you do is you hit select lineups, which you'll see right underneath the crunch tab. I hope this is following, but I'm trying to explain it as best I can because it's literally what I'm doing as I'm talking right now. So while your lineups are crunching, you'll see right underneath, you could see stop. So if you build out a bunch of lineups starting to go slow, you can press stop, and then you go select lineups, and then move whatever lineups you've built to the crunch that already is housing a bunch of lineups that you've already built. And then what you could do is you could just delete the crunch that had the lineups moved out of it, and then just do another crunch, build out like 750, 800 lineups and move them over. So I do that, and it takes me like 10 minutes to build out 10,000 lineups like that. Whereas if you tried to do it all in one go, it would take forever. So that's the best advice I can give you, Guitar Z, man. If you have any more questions, DM me in our Discord channel, and I'll get back to you, and I can show you exactly how I do it on my screen. Salvo G wants to know favorite stack configuration tonight. If I'm going expensive, it's the Braves. I know they're popular, but still, it's a team that I think warrants even more exposure than what they're getting. If I'm going cheap, it's the Pittsburgh Pirates, who are actually overall my most rostered stack on the entire slate. Neil, how about for yourself? Which stack are you getting to the most of? I assume it's probably about the same as mine. And then we'll look at the FanDuel lineups and lineup generator, Mike.
Yep, it is the exact same as you. I'm getting to a lot of the Braves. I'm getting to a lot of Pittsburgh. I will say, if you want to go contrarian, and I know Eric talked about this on the last show, and I love the call out of our Twins. Of course, Eric and I both Twins homers, but I did think it was a brilliant call out of the Twins. They're going really low owned against Xavier Curry. Twins have a lot of strong lefties. There's a lot to like about them, and they're cheap. So I'm actually currently, I've been hand building off to the side here, seeing if I can hand build a FanDuel lineup real quick, just because I'm curious. Because as you mentioned, there is no salary cap, and you are absolutely right. Atlanta's so cheap on FanDuel relative to DraftKings. So I'm working out the perfect Twins Braves stack with Harrison as the pitcher here on FanDuel.
And by the way, Salvo followed up. He didn't mean individual pitchers, or individual stacks. He meant like in general our favorite stack configuration, like 4-4, 5-3, 5-4, 5X. So I would say in general, most of my lineups end up being either 5-1-1-1 or 5-2-1. That's where most of my lineups end up being after I run them through the Sims tool. I build all 5-man stacks on DraftKings, and that's generally what I get to, is either 5-2 lineups or 5-1-1. Every once in a while, like 5-3s as well. But for you, do you have anything different to answer this with?
Yeah, I would say 5-2-1 ends up being the like, if I'm just running like one set of lineups, I default to the 5-2. I like it just because you get the primary stack. I think having the largest possible primary stack is generally what you want to do on a large slate. Sometimes on smaller slates, I'll go to like a 4-4, 4-3, even sometimes 4-2 kind of thing. But on a full slate like this, I want my primary stack to be as big as possible. So I want my primary stack to be 5. And then I usually go to a 2-man secondary stack instead of a 3-man, just because it gives you a little bit more flexibility in terms of positionality and filling out your projection, like filling out to have a higher projected lineup with a strong one-off and in the right position. So I like the 5-2 also.
All right, let's go ahead and build some FanDuel lineups. Now, like I said before, guys, if you guys want to sign up for the lineup generator, there's a link below. It's going to get you 50% the first time you sign up, less than $5. But also, if there's any other package you want to sign up for at Stokastic.com, use that link below. When you sign up for the first time, you will get 50% off. Let's go all stack types here, Mike. And let's try Contrarian for FanDuel. I'm curious to see what comes up Contrarian when we build FanDuel lineups out. No, don't lock anybody in. You can skip that part. And we'll see what ends up popping up. So save 20 lineups there, Mike, and we'll see what we get to. I just ran my final run of 10,000 lineups for myself personally, and I'm about to upload them into the Sims tool, and we'll see what I end up getting to. FanDuel lineups, we got to a bunch of Pirates again, also a lot of Braves, Ronald Acuna, Austin Riley. Click on the stack exposure really quick, Mike. I assume this is like half Pirates, half, yeah. 60% Pirates, 30% Braves. We also got some Giants, some Blue Jays, some Red Sox, some Padres, some Orioles, a little bit more spread out on FanDuel. Anything else that you're noticing as far as the stacks, Neil?
Yeah, it's looking very similar to what I was getting earlier. Also, a lot of Pirates, a lot of Braves, just like you said. It is much easier to build Braves stacks on FanDuel, as you can see here. I mean, we're still getting to a lot of the Braves on DraftKings, but every bat in the Braves lineup, I think, is playable. We're getting more San Francisco than I would expect here on FanDuel. 15% San Francisco stacks is a little bit surprising to me, but nothing too crazy there. So yeah, that's kind of similar stuff.
All right, so let's go ahead and look at the player exposures, because I want to see what pitchers we got to as well. We know about the stacks, primarily Braves, primarily Pirates. Gausman, we got to more of him on FanDuel than DraftKings, even though it's only a single pitcher. So it just goes to show how much easier it is to pay up for pitching on FanDuel than it is on DraftKings, especially because our second most rostered pitcher, Blake Snell. So he doesn't look like a bad pivot, at least per the lineup generator, because he has less than half the ownership of Gausman. So that's one way you could differentiate a lineup, is just by going to Snell instead of Gausman. Keeps going down though, Mike. I want to see what other pitchers ended up popping up. If we got to any cheap pitchers, let's see. There's Brian Wu, Kenta Maeda, and a little bit of Grayson Rodriguez. Well under the field on Grayson Rodriguez, though. So once again, another thing that you'll see in FanDuel in the lineups build, kind of similar to what you and I were talking about before, Neil. We've got Kenta Maeda. Go scroll a little bit down there, Mike. Maeda in 20% of lineups. Brian Wu in 20% of lineups. Grayson Rodriguez in 5%. And Maeda's way lower owned than those guys. And we have a similar projection. I really, really do like getting to Maeda on FanDuel as a low owned pivot.
I was surprised. Did you get too much Maeda on DraftKings? Because he was my highest exposed pitcher in my original crunch.
Yeah, so I've got one more lineup running. I was I think a little over 20% the last Sims run I did. I've got my lineups showing up in a second here. I'll know, because it's just simming the slate with the lineups that I uploaded, and then I could speak to it better. Let's see. So favorite, my top 150. Look at my exposures. I have, a little over 20% exposure to Kenta Maeda.
Nice. I think I had a little bit more than that, but not too far off.
Yeah, and then as far as stacks go, I'm getting to, Atlanta, Pittsburgh, my two most rostered stacks right now. Another one that's making it into some of my more rostered teams, actually the Kansas City Royals, which is something that I wasn't totally expecting to see. So we look at Kansas City, only projected for 3% ownership. They do have a 7.4% chance of being a top scoring team, but that's my third most rostered stack right now, Neil, is the Kansas City Royals, a team that is much better for fantasy than in real life, because in real life, they're terrible. One of the worst teams we have in baseball, but at least for fantasy purposes, when they do score runs, it comes with stolen base, it comes with home runs. So it is a team that generally looks better for fantasy than it does for DFS. So that's kind of an unexpected team that's winding up in a bunch of my lineups. Is the Royals a team that you're getting to at all?
Yes, they are. So I'm at this point, I've moved my into what I'm actually doing to my sim. So okay. I'm only playing 25 lineups today, and I gave boost to the Twins. So this is not my initial exposures at this point, but I still have 8% exposure to 5-man Kansas City stack. So they are still my third highest exposed, tied with Baltimore. I also have 8% Baltimore. So I have currently 28% 5-mans of Pittsburgh, 24% of Atlanta, 8% Kansas City, 8% Baltimore. And now I have 4% of the Twins, 4% of Cincinnati as full 5-mans.
Right. So I've got my final lineups selected here, about to upload them. I did end up here with the Braves as my most rostered team. Is that I'm not sure if you identify which team is your most rostered. Did it end up being Atlanta?
It's between Atlanta and Pittsburgh. I would guess when you factor in one-offs, it's probably Atlanta. Just a little bit over Pittsburgh.
All right, gonna copy all my lineups and paste them in. Something else to talk about, which we usually have questions about, I'll check in Discord if we got them yet, about what I'm looking at in single entry. And we could talk through it right now, Neil, because I have a couple teams that I'm considering, one of them being Pittsburgh, one of them being Atlanta, and I guess Kansas City now, based on some of the exposures I'm getting to them. I think I'm just going to go with Atlanta in single entry and then go really contrarian at pitcher. One of my top projected lineups is actually a Brave stack where the two pitchers are Jamison Tyone and Tyler McGill. Does that sound reasonable to you? Is there a different team do you think should be considered in single entry today?
Yeah, I mean, it kind of that is kind of the decision point, right? Is just, am I playing Atlanta or am I playing somebody who's going to be way lower owned than Atlanta? I think in single entry. So here's where I'm wondering, like, if in a smaller contest, would I consider changing up the construction? I just said that I would play a 5-man primary stack, but if we're talking single entry and it's a smaller field, I might consider playing like a 4-4 stack or something like that. I would probably include Atlanta in my stack somewhere. They would probably be my primary stack. I'm not, and let me see how, I mean, I guess the Twins are getting some ownership, so it's not like they are the super contrarian stack you could do. You could do Atlanta and Kansas City. Like, as you said, I mean, Kansas City looks really good. They're also only getting 3% exposure, 3% ownership. So I don't hate the idea of actually combining those two, Atlanta and Kansas City.
Are there any other low-owned teams that are standing out to you at all? Any teams you think really make sense as a contrarian option?
Colorado, under 1% ownership on Colorado, 4% chance to be in the top stack if you want. I mean, it's still, they're in Coors, getting no ownership. Bryce Elder is a fine pitcher, but it's not like he's an ace there. So I don't hate the idea of going to Colorado. I want to go to the teams that when they go off are going to hit a lot of homers or have potential to put up points in that way where they're scoring a lot of fantasy points. And I think Baltimore is certainly one of those teams. They look pretty good. 6% chance to be in the top stack. Boston, a team you could certainly consider. Maybe Texas also would be in that bucket for me. Would you consider Toronto? Toronto actually getting a good amount of ownership, so maybe not because of the ownership there. Seattle also getting a good amount of ownership. So yeah, it'd probably come down to Houston is at under 2% ownership currently. They look really good. Yeah, maybe it would actually probably be Houston for me against Chris Sale. We've seen Chris Sale get blown up before. Houston's coming in at under 2% ownership. I would consider going full contrarian and going with the Astros there.
All right, so we got some questions in Discord. First one is Hef Love wants to know, am I going super contrarian on single entry? Kind of. I am at pitcher. My pitching combination is, if you didn't hear me before, I went with a 5-man Brave stack and then Tyler McGill and Jamison Tyone as my pitchers. I don't know. Would you consider that to be really contrarian? Like, the stack clearly isn't, but the pitchers are very contrarian. Like, I think both of them are going to be like 2% owned in single entry. So I feel like my lineup is different enough.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, exactly. So it's not super contrarian when you're going to the highest owned stack on a day when they're getting 17% ownership, but like it's contrarian enough. So yeah, you don't need to be as contrarian as possible. I think that you are sufficiently contrarian just by going to those super low owned pitchers. So yeah, I'd be happy with that.
Yeah, and I mean, a big part of this too is if you look at our top stacks tool right now, we have the Braves with a 24.3% chance to be the top scoring team on the slate. The next closest team is the Padres going up against Adam Wainwright. We know how terrible he is. And they're at 7.9% top stack odds. So the Braves are more than 3 times the odds of any other team on the slate to be the top scoring team, at least any other individual team. Obviously, we're not saying the Braves are like have a 75 or 80% chance to overall be the top scoring team, but on a slate of this size, where one individual team is going to be the highest scoring team in our projections 1/4 of the time, and they're projected for 16% ownership as a stack, it's just a spot that I really want to be targeting pretty heavily. So Braves, I'm a little bit overweight to the field on them. And then even in lineups where I don't have Braves, I do have a bunch of the Braves hitters as one-offs. Mentioned that there are ways you can be different with pitcher, because you don't need to have every single spot in your lineup be a low-owned player for the lineup to be contrarian. If it's just a couple of players that are low-owned, it's going to be a contrarian lineup, especially in a small field like that. And then Einsteinian wants to know, if you aren't playing the Braves in single entry, do you have a preference between Boston, the Padres, and Baltimore? So Neil, give him one of these 3 teams to play. Einsteinian, Boston, Padres, or Baltimore for single entry. Between those 3, which way would you go?
So the Padres are actually getting pretty high ownership. So it would probably not be the Padres just because of the ownership. It'd be come down to Baltimore or Boston. I would probably go with. Man, that's tough. That's really tough. Those two are so similar in our top stacks tool. Like, they both have 5.5 to 5.6% chance of being the top stack, both at 6% ownership. I guess I would probably go to Baltimore first if I'm going between those two. To me, it would actually be, I would probably go to Houston, as I said, but obviously a tougher matchup with Chris Sale. It's kind of a different thing than those two, but If I'm paying up for a stack that I think could go off at really low ownership, it would probably actually go to Houston. But if it is just those three that you're talking about, I guess I would probably default to the Orioles.
Yeah, I mean, the Padres, it's not like they're crazy contrarian or anything. I'll agree with you, and I'll go Orioles. We could settle on that. If you want to go contrarian single entry on stadium, I don't have any issue with clicking on the Orioles. And then also, I mean, if you do so choose to play Grayson Rodriguez, because if you're going to be that contrarian at offense, it figures you probably want to play the chalk pitchers. There's, a little bit added correlation if the Orioles go out, score a bunch of runs against Michael Kopech, which is well within the realm of possibility because he's terrible. Then, yeah, Grayson Rodriguez would likely be getting the win bonus in that kind of scenario. Any other stacks that you're getting any kind of significant exposure to that you want to talk about, Neil? If not, we'll do our home run picks of the night.
No, yeah, I mean, I already gave like literally every 5-man stack that I'm playing. There's only 5 of them. Nobody else that I'm getting to in any significant amount. As I said, you could play Colorado. They're very, very contrarian here. They are in Coors Field. So that's another stack that I would consider. But I think we've talked about every stack that I'm really seriously considering playing here.
All right. Then you know what time it is, Neil. It is dong time. It is time for us to give out our favorite home run picks of the day. First, shout out to Michael Lane, who left us a super chat. There was no question, though, just a super chat. Let me see if he threw another question in here in the, nope, just a super chat from Michael Lane. So thank you, Michael. We appreciate the support. And by the way, if anybody wants to support the channel, like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel. Those are free ways that you could support our content. We do really appreciate it. Something else, too, that we could help you with, sign up at Caesars, because we have this deal going on with them right now where you sign up for the first time using the link below over at Caesars. You can get $250 for free. All you have to do is you sign up, you place a $50 bet, and they give you $250 in bonus bets paid out in $50 increments. They give you one $50 free bet per week. But that's free money that you didn't have otherwise, Neil. So go take advantage of this offer, especially ahead of football season. Get yourself some free money, right? Get some free bets in your back pocket, locked and loaded for the start of football season. Sign up using that link below. $50, $250 for free in bonus bets. Have you found your home run pick, Neil? Have you done your wizardry?
I have. I've done my wizardry. I actually showed my wizardry on screen yesterday when I self-produced a solo show. So I went behind the scenes, showed people exactly what it looks back here. Today we have 7 of our top 8 home run picks are on the Braves in Coors. So I cannot pick any of those 7 of the top 8. I'm going to go with the 8th one, which is Vlad Guerrero. Has a 26% chance of hitting a home run today off Josiah Gray.
All right, what do I want to do here? What do I want to do? No Atlanta hitters. That's the Coors Field game. Is it cheating to pick on Adam Wainwright?
No, he's a legend and a Hall of Famer.
Do you know what it means if somebody's a legend?
It means that they are awesome and you're free to pick on them.
It means that they're old. That's what it means. Like, there is no scenario where you could be a young legend. Adam Wainwright is a legend because he's been pitching in baseball since like the Black Sox scandal. Him and Emac, they go way back.
Yeah.
Adam Wainwright does not belong in the big leagues anymore. The reason that Adam Wainwright is still pitching at the MLB level is because he has 198 career wins, and the Cardinals are desperately trying to get him 2 more wins, and it's going very poorly because he sucks in just about every single outing.
You know what he needs, Greg?
A bidet.
He needs some steroids.
A
bidet maybe could help. Yeah.
But I mean, who knows? Maybe you lock and load your bidet with some steroids and shoot it right up your butthole.
You could shoot all sorts of stuff up your butt with a bidet.
Damn right you can. Anyway, I want to pick on Adam Wainwright today. That's the guy that I'm going to pick on. And the one that I want to go to, I'm going to say Juan Soto. So Juan Soto, one of the best overall hitters in baseball. I know he's been in a little bit of a funk as of late. He only has, although he did have a multi-hit game last time out and homered the game before. But in general, it's been a pretty slow couple-week stretch for Juan Soto. All that aside, I like him to break out of it today. He homers off of Adam Wainwright, super expensive today, but the Padres, they're the team that do have the second overall top stack odds for us in our top stack tools because of how bad Adam Wainwright is. So Juan Soto, picking him to homer today, and I see a bunch of people in the chat going with him as well. Obi-Wan said Juan Soto. Nicholas Robertson said Juan Soto. Is there anybody else? Yep, Nicholas Robertson again said Soto. And then we had Samson said Ozuna. Now you can't pick somebody at Coors Field. That's cheating. But maybe Juan Soto's cheating a little bit as well. Guys, thank you very much for watching. If you're not done yet, do us a favor, like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel. Good luck with all your lineups tonight. See you back here tomorrow. Later, guys. Have a good night.